Oh, is it?
You can listen to temptation, you can even go astray. But if you listen to temptation, it's gonna be the devil to pay. You can wink your eye at moral if you care to live that way. But if you wink your eye at moral, it's gonna be the devil to pay. All you sinners, you ought to know. Satan's waiting.
Today's Architectural Board of Review meeting for Monday, February 16th.
Tuesday.
And do we need to do a roll call or not? A mic check?
Here we go. Chair Gradine.
Here.
Scott Hopkins.
Here.
Courtney Jane Miller.
Here.
Stephanie Poole.
Here.
Amy Fitzgerald Tripp.
Here.
Howard Woodtosh.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Our first item of general business is public comment, but there's no one here to make a comment, so we'll skip that. Item B is approval of the minutes of the ABR meeting of February 2nd. And hopefully board members have had a chance to review those minutes. And we'll start with the first page, cover page, and first item. If anyone has any comments.
You need a motion to approve.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. And we need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
And a second
Second.
by Scott. Any comments on the minutes? Starting with one, or before one.
Nope.
I have a comment on item one. Under two, it says the board requested a physical sample. I don't recall the board asking for a sample of the rack, or is it a sample for the color? Seems out of place there. So I would just delete that second sentence. And then at the bottom of 5, just to clarify what was being said there, the last sentence, it says, even though a uniform standard, could we rephrase that to say, just as a uniform standard exists for El Pueblo Viejo, there should also be a simple uniform standard, then the part in parentheses, but then cross out if one doesn't exist already for other areas and neighborhoods of the city. So you just cross out that portion if one doesn't exist already, just to make it a simpler sentence. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to item 2. And I do have one comment on item 2 as well. Number 4 under the motion. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, I guess you were the maker of this motion, but they had provided alternatives to the brick at the meeting.
Yeah, it sounds odd to me as well.
And so I think that whole first phrase, provide alternate materials for brick for the planted areas, should just be deleted. And then it should read, the board prefers the crushed sandstone color.
That makes
Something that was an alternative that they proposed.
I thought they had a concrete color, sandstone color, and the brick. They had 3.
But they did not present an option for
Okay.
for crushed sandstone in those planted
think
areas
you mean
as
the
a
sandstone
potential.
color.
Color.
As a
I'm talking about the
potential-
color.
Sandstone color.
Oh, I thought you were
Pavers.
on item 4.
Yeah.
You said item 4.
Right. So that's the way I understood our comment there. The board prefers the crushed sandstone color pavers, colored pavers.
We just
That
call
was
it sandstone
No,
pavers.
Crushed sandstone?
no, we went, the board prefers crushed sandstone in those locations as a placeholder for future planting. And the buff color refers to the color
Right, in the
in
next
the
sentence.
next part of the sentence.
Okay, I'm not familiar, and I don't remember it that way, so I'll concede to other board members.
It's important because this came before me at consent today, and I've put it back to the full board for consideration in the future. So I think it behooves us to get this correct, and that was the intention. I had and other board members had, I thought, when we put that in the motion, because we wanted to be able to, in the future, plant something there when the Parks Department had the means.
Okay, so,
This is what my notes reflected too, as it is in the minutes.
okay,
Yeah.
great. So we will cross out that first phrase, and it should begin with the board prefers crushed sandstone, period. Is that correct? I'm just trying to get it correct. If other board members,
I think
I think
Excuse
it's
me, Mr.
fine
Chair.
how it is.
I think that the wording should refer to the alternate material
okay, right.
as
Okay,
that was presented.
Yes.
And the business of the placeholder is pretty key.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Okay, so
think that's
scratch my
kind of-
comments then. Sorry.
I have another question on that item, if I may.
Yes, please.
As I recall, there was also a proposal for the median. There was some striping, and maybe it was a curb or whatever, and it was the place in the middle of the street where pedestrians can stop, wait before crossing. And I don't see anything in these comments that refers to the median, and I believe that was also part of what was discussed with the landscaping at the T section located at the end of Palo Colorado Street. There was one, at the foot, the Palo Colorado tees into the street. There's one across. What about the median? Was that just going to be painted?
I don't think there were any comments on the median.
Most people were fine with it as presented.
Right.
It was discussed that potentially that could be landscaping, and then further discussed, we talked about maintenance and how it would
It's
be
dangerous.
difficult to maintain that median and its narrow
Okay,
size,
so it died in the median, but not in the T intersection.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay,
as is reflected in the minutes.
wasn't quite clear. Thank you.
Okay, if we're done with that item, we can go on to 3, 4, 5. On item 5, I know this was not in our comments, but I'm wondering if Susan, if you could email the applicant and ask for additional photographs of other 2- and 3-story houses along the south side of APS. That was something that came up in discussion, and it never made it into the minutes. So it's a kind of informal request to additional photographs
Of other 2- and 3-story houses on APS in the
on the
proximity.
south side of APS.
Oh, on south side, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Just the photos, thanks.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Number 6.
I have a comment on the comments.
Okay. Well, did everyone get Tony's update of the edits to that item? Howard, it's right into your hand there.
Yes, I
Okay,
see it.
all right. So we should be commenting on Tony's comments rather than what's in the printed minutes.
I have a comment on Tony's comments.
Please.
First item, I agree with all the comments except the last sentence. The board was unable to make the findings of no visual impact due to and after that I would say the visibility of the proposed project on a scenic drive. Size, bulk, whatever it says, bulk and scale is a wording that really applies to buildings and in a neighborhood context. The reason that I could not make the findings is because of the visibility of the thing itself in a scenic resource, a scenic area. That was my only problem with this. The rest of the comments I understand.
Well, my reaction to that would be the bulk and scale. You know, if those antennas were, only 4 inches high, then we might have been able to
4 inches?
find it. 4 inches. So I'm talking, they were considerably scaled down, then we could find it appropriate.
4 inches is reasonable.
Yeah, so that's why I think bulk and scale does apply actually to the proposal.
I just think that the visibility of that in that area is a problem. There's heavy cables and all that sort of thing. If you have driven it as many times as I do, you know that is an intrusion.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be difficult for me to negotiate on something between 6 feet and 4 inches and say, what's the threshold? Oh, all of a sudden,
Right. Well, no,
18
we're
inches
just
is
talking about
okay.
wording here, though. Could you restate what the proposed change to wording?
I just think that the words bulk and scale are not applicable to a cell site antenna, and that what it is the visibility of the damn thing. Sorry, the thing from the public way there.
Okay.
He just proposes to delete due to the proposed bulk and scale.
How would you revise that?
The way I would read it is make the findings of no visual impacts due to the visibility of the proposed project on a scenic drive. I just take out the bulk and scale and put visibility of the proposed project.
Which would change it from being an issue with the bulk and scale to an issue with the object itself.
It's subject itself, yeah.
Well, I'm not in favor of those changes. I don't know how the board members feel. I think the way it's stated here and revised by Tony is fine.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I could offer some comments. I don't want anybody to be misled about why these edits are coming to you. This is normal behind-the-scenes process that I just didn't have a chance to review these minutes before they got sent to y'all last week. This is this is typical that staff makes these kinds of edits prior to you all receiving them. So this was just happened too late, so that's why it's coming to you now.
Right.
And when I was doing this, I reviewed the video a few times, listening to it over and over again. And I think you would find that all the suggested changes that I made are closer to a verbatim transcript of what was said.
All right. Well, that's
And
one
I'm not
thing
in favor
changing,
of a change either.
I think it's okay as written.
okay. Then we'll go on to item 7.
So, excuse me, Mr. Chair, so you're accepting Tony's edits then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Tony.
I just have one comment on item 7, number 3, under the motion. If I understood that comment, it was meant to read that a majority of the board finds the roof-mounted light folly is appropriate to the project and should be located more to the rear of the front facade.
It's closer to the rear, closer
Facade.
to the edge of the rear facade. Because the rear is the back.
The rear facade.
So it should be closer to the rear facade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really? Because I
Yes.
thought it was at the front of the building.
No, it was in the back.
Oh, okay. All right. And so you wanted to move forward to the
So you
to
can
the
actually see it, yeah, from the
okay.
back. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't agree with that, but that's fine. All right. Item 8.
I have one more on that item.
Yes.
7.
Okay.
Item 7 says provide window details. And I believe there were some other details that were requested that had to do with where surface materials change and meet.
Uh-huh.
Didn't make it into the motion.
Well, but there was conversation about it. I mean, my recollection was that where the materials change, that is something that ought to be detailed at the time it comes, doesn't have to be for concept, but
It's for
Well, it is in
final.
front of
why
us
would you ask
today.
for window details at concept level?
If you want it in the motion, it needs to be stated when the motion is being made and when those comments are being made in the motion. You might have discussed it before the motion was made, but if it was something discussed before the motion and then the motion got made, we don't just automatically stick things in from the discussion. You really do have to repeat it.
Very well.
Okay. Item 8. All those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And we are on to
Consent minutes?
consent minutes. Yes, thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
So for February 9th, consent item A, 649 Pilgrim Terrace Drive was continued 1 week with comments. Item B, 400 Hitchcock Way was postponed indefinitely. Item C, 13 South Soledad Street was granted final approval as submitted.
All in favor of the minutes as read out? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements. Requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals or future agenda items.
I think we need to do the February 17th consent.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
So we need a motion for February 17th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Stephanie and Scott.
And then those items today were, item A was city crosswalks. It's continued 2 weeks to the full board. Item B, 649 Pilgrim Terrace Drive, final approval as noted. Item C, 402 East Ortega was granted project design and final approvals as noted. And item D, 213 West Coda Street was granted final approval as submitted.
All in favor of the minutes as read?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're on to announcements.
I have one announcement.
Yes,
I'll be
Scott.
recusing myself from the first item as the Housing Authority is the current client of my office.
Very good, thanks.
And I will be doing the same for item 4 for the same reason.
All right.
And just board member Kung will be absent today.
Very good. Subcommittee reports. Okay, so we're on to the general meeting. Item 1, 211 to 221 Sycamore Lane. This is a Housing Authority project. Proposal to renovate an existing 20-unit multifamily development on a 1.69-acre parcel. Proposal includes exterior improvements intended to give the buildings a Spanish colonial architectural style. And we saw this, we've seen this a couple times now, so I think board members are familiar with the project. And we'll check out our minutes from the last meeting. And I think it would be appropriate just to go one by one through the minutes once we get the drawings laid out.
I'm Kevin Dumaine. I'm project architect with Design Architects.
David Black, landscape architect.
And Dale Azam, the Housing Authority.
Greetings, welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're back today because we're looking at a very tight time frame with a funding deadline coming up at the beginning of March. So we wanted to get resolve any of the sort of outstanding issues with the ABR, hopefully today, and with the goal that we could come back next week on at the consent meeting for a preliminary design or project design approval, and then follow up with final later complete working drawings.
Is it not possible for you to get project design approval today?
No, because our show hearing is actually tomorrow.
I see.
And so as part of the sequence, we have to come back later.
All right. Well, to kind of expedite this, why don't we just go one by one through the comments from last time, and then you can tell us how you address them.
Okay.
We can focus on those. So number one was, it was continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer to return to the full board with comments. Number one, the board found the overall project's direction is acceptable based on board comments in the previous meeting. Further refinements requested are, A, study simplifying some of the details.
And that's been a big theme of the revisions and refinements. So overall, all the wood elements have gotten simpler. The sort of decorative plaster elements have gotten simpler. The wood pieces, they've gone to squared off ends. We've eliminated, early on we had the plaster scallops on the side elevations. Those have all gone to more of a heavy timber look. The buttresses have all been reduced down to a fairly minimal size. They're large enough that they still kind of read, and they also can capture the projecting, second floor on the side elevations. Just brought back to the sort of the minimum size that would work. Mm-hmm. There used to be, on opposite corners, these sort of false chimney elements. We've reduced that down to the single one. There used to be, kind of a sliding door into this patio, which really didn't work well for furniture and looks cleaner by matching the window upstairs. Stephanie had a suggestion about the entries at the last meeting. We were able to sort of pull back, the return here, which created some space to kind of get a very shallow surround on the door. We're also going to be putting in a plank-style door. And then, kind of those are the major elements. Mm-hmm. There was also a comment in there about the, the terracotta. We sort of changed proportions there. For final, we'll come back with a complete detail on that.
Okay.
I think I've covered. Oh, we should maybe hit the finishes real briefly. The roof materials are still in the mail, but the building would all get resurfaced with an integral colored plaster, kind of an oatmeal color from La Habra. The roof is all going to be kind of a heavy asphalt shake. That's what the existing roof structure will support. But we're going to go the thickest one possible, and it's going to be like in a dark brown color. I believe that would be, we either do a GAF shake wood or bark wood. Waiting to see the final samples. And then on the, going for a matching color on the laundry building where it has to be a rolled product. The gutters and downspouts, similar to some past Housing Authority projects, would all be in a bonderized, galvanized material. So you get that dark gray look. Looks a little more rustic. The windows, on the casements and the fixed windows, they're all metal window corps. So they have the beveled stops, be bronze anodized finish. Sliders in the back would be bronze anodized, but it's a different manufacturer. And by we're being allowed to use an older energy code for this project since it was a 2010 vintage project, and we're being able to maintain that standard. So therefore, we can use the aluminum products, which will give us a more recessed appearance at the windows. And I think that pretty much covers our finishes. Oh, and the other big part of finishes is going to be, we're going to have a lot of, warm colored precast concrete pavers out in the driveway areas. But the big issues were the elevations that we discussed previously.
You've got a taupe color there on your color board. Where does that go?
Oh, that's the base of the wainscot at the laundry building. Our wood trim.
I think that does cover 6 or 7 architectural comments there. And The comment about the landscape plan was the board finds the general plant palette acceptable, add fruit trees where possible, and then also further study existing creek plantings and the relationship with existing creek grass areas. Just use this.
Let me address the creek plantings first. I think I indicated the last meeting that the housing authorities, well, our scope of work pretty much is limited to the existing chain link fence at the top of the bank, the creek bank. We're indicating that that fence would be painted black, which I think would be, visually more appealing. Again, we're not the housing authority is not in a position to, address riparian renovation of the creek. I mean, I think I should point out to the board too that this is a housing authority project, low-income housing. We're basically renovating essentially what's there now, and significantly. And getting down to the creek, that's a whole different kind of project. It really is. I mean, I know I'm working on a bridge project just up the creek, and we're going to be doing some restoration there in and around the bridge at Montecito. But as far as this goes, and then as far as the lawn is concerned, I think I'd indicated the last time too that we'd like to leave. We've actually reduced the lawn by probably 15%. Just cut it back, and
Since the last review?
no.
Oh, okay.
No, just
Overall.
Overall. But we felt it important, and the housing authority feels it's important to leave the lawn because it's really the only open space for kids to play, and there are some 20-plus kids living in this project, if not more. So what you see is what we're proposing. And then as far as the citrus trees, we actually, even the last time, I think we're showing in this little community garden that we've developed, we're showing there exist 2 existing citrus that we're transplanting to here, and then we've added another orange and lemon here too, so it's a total of 4. And I would point out to the board too that this community garden does not exist now, so this is a real, I think, a nice amenity for the project. Additional amenity. So
the changes you made since last time were what? Are those?
Just indicating a note that the fence is going to be painted black, and then adding the 2 citrus.
Okay.
The rest remains the same. You've already accepted the palette according to the minutes. So
Yes. All right.
and we've attempted to use native plants, on those elevations that face the creek. So
Okay. All right. Do you have any lighting cut sheets yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. We do have a color board. So our final, there's 2 comments more that I haven't mentioned yet. The board finds that proposed zoning modifications are aesthetically appropriate and do not pose consistency issues with the ABR design guidelines or the neighborhood preservation ordinance. The board also finds the proposed zoning modifications present no negative impacts to the neighborhood. I noticed because you pulled those kind of pilasters back, did that change your distance between buildings issues at all, or not? Is it still there?
It's gotten better,
Okay.
but we still have multiple modifications. They've been interpreted slightly different after our intake meeting, so we're pursuing 3 modifications. One for a front yard condition, which this building is actually a front yard because of the street here. The second mod is some between buildings covers several different conditions, and then on the far side of the site, there are some conditions where you're just talking a few inches into the setback, just where the building was built. And so that's a side yard condition. So we have a front yard, side yard, and in between building modifications.
Okay. And then the final was choose one style of architecture, either Monterey colonial or Spanish colonial revival.
That's the one that's been the biggest challenge for us. Since this is a renovation, and we're dealing with these existing building structures, and for the most part, our additions are sort of additive. We're not looking to sort of rip them completely apart and disrupt. We're trying to minimize the period of disruption on the occupancy. Keep the tenants in there as long as possible. Have the improvements take as little time as possible, and keep the budget within reason. So if we were going from scratch, we would have the ability to do overhangs on all 4 sides, but we don't. So we've had to kind of create a hybrid style where we have the cutoff, flared cornice condition and flared rakes.
Okay. So does this set represent the changes that are shown
Yes.
on this drawing?
Yeah, this is
for all
just
this is just typical for all buildings, right?
Correct.
Okay. So questions from the board? Oh, we open it for public comment? And seeing none, we'll start with questions from the board. Stephanie.
Yes. Kevin, is there a reason why these louver doors for the water heater closets can be moved on the inside face of underneath the covered area, the overhang?
Oh, we were just keeping them in the existing locations. So in 9 of the 10 spots, they'd be exactly the same frame locations, and then in the handicap unit or the accessible unit, they'd be raised, but they'd still be on the same face.
Okay. So it's because they're in the same locations, and nothing about that area is changing. Is that correct? Like some of these are added, some you're adding areas and taking some away.
Those are the same boxes.
Okay.
And there might, I'm not sure, but there might be room to put them on the sides if we had to. It's a little tighter, I think, proportionally.
It seemed to be about the same proportion, in my opinion, but I don't know. Take a look at it. Also, would you consider this small eyebrow detail in other areas, such as the second floor windows, or is that cost prohibitive?
No, we didn't do it on the back side because the cornice is so close to the window head.
I understand here it is, but not on this side.
Oh, that's what I was. Actually, you're right.
On this side, this detail. I understand you don't have enough there, but it would.
We could add it to
possibly
the back side.
give a little dimension to the windows on that second floor.
That'd be fine.
Well, we're in questions right now. We're not into comments yet, but any other questions from the board? Yes, Howard.
What color is the stain of the trellis?
Sort of dark brown.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one quick one. On the site plan, there's a hatch that is delineated or noted by C4, which calls out pavers. Is that, so the whole area that's represented with that hatch is intended to be pavers? Is that
That's the current thinking. We may reduce that slightly and have some like concrete aprons after we've worked with, for trash and things. But the big picture, that's the idea.
That's the idea. So existing parking to remain, that's just referencing the stalls themselves. That's not the material. It's all going to be new pavers.
It's all the same configuration. It'll get restriped with the pavers.
Okay.
All right, so comments from the board, and we'll start with Stephanie.
I like all the improvements that have been made to the project. Especially the proportions and the scale and the door delineation. Compositionally, it's starting to make a little more sense, and it's the design is becoming more cohesive, in my opinion. And I think that the heavier roofing materials that you've proposed are acceptable. I know that we've been talking about tile roof and all that, but a heavier style with a bit of a texture and thickness on the roof, and even though it's composition, tile will be acceptable. And the changes to the first story windows in lieu of the sliding doors are an improvement. I would suggest adding this eyebrow detail to the windows on the second floor and the rear elevation.
Okay, other comments? Amy?
I agree with Stephanie, and I think that the change from the plaster to the wood details were, I think it goes a lot nicer with the design and also with the wood on the front doors and the recesses there. The only material I was looking at was the color for the doors and windows. And if, I guess what made you, and thinking about it being more of like a bronze anodized rather than black.
It's a little bit warmer.
Well, verbally, I think you represented that it was going to be bronze.
I did.
Okay.
That's a decision that goes back to like 5 years ago. We just kept that one the same.
So you are.
So it's black, or is it bronze
Well,
anodized?
it should be bronze.
That looks black.
I asked her to put on bronze.
So that's that was my only
We
comment.
prefer the bronze
Okay.
anodized color. Yeah.
I'll check on that.
That was
Other
all I
comments?
had.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Courtney.
I don't have any comments.
Howard.
I agree with comments made, and I would especially like to see these louvered doors to the hot water heater enclosures moved around to the side. It would greatly simplify that elevation in all of the buildings. And other than that, I think the changes made to the fenestration, to the details, to calm this project down and simplify it are well done. I think this project is ready.
All right. So the comments that I'm hearing are the board appreciates the refinements and revisions made to the detailing since the last review, the detailing and fenestration, that the heavy composition shingles would be an acceptable solution for the roof, that the board prefers a bronze anodized color for the metal doors and windows. Some board members felt the plaster eyebrow shown on the side, the right and left elevation could also be applied to the rear elevation at the second floor. And there was another comment. Some board members felt that if possible, relocating the utility closet doors on the rear elevation to the side of that enclosure would be preferable. Other than that, we could carry forward item or number I in our motion from last time, that none of the modifications present a adverse visual impact. And then it would be returning to the full board after your staff hearing, or to consent, actually. This could go to consent, in my view.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So it would be indefinite continuance to consent. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Stephanie and Howard, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can just fold my plan up with yours, I guess.
So we're on to item 2. Right on time. Look at that. This is 28 Anacapa Street. It's a continued item. Proposal for alterations to an existing 3,695 square foot commercial building. We saw this at our last meeting, so board members are familiar. Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect on the project, one of them. you saw this project 2 weeks ago, and Henry Linney was proposing it. And this is Tammy Hughes, one of the property owners. The last meeting, her husband Kim Hughes, also a property owner, was the one at the meeting. So since then, I talked to staff. Aunt Susan knows this. Everything was being requested to be put under one permit, one MST number, as a new project, even though we're under construction on the rest of the project right now, the previous approval. There were 3 items that were alterations to specific scope of work that was part of the last permit. So because we're under construction and we want to keep going, we requested from staff that we would be allowed to separate those 3 items from this new MST number and put them as a revision number 1 to the permit set. So I have 2 submittals now so that we can hopefully, instead of having to go through environmental assessment, comments only, coastal exemption, full building plan check, couple months down the road, so we can keep moving on construction. I've gotten permission to separate those 3 items out. And those 3 items are the 1-foot extension to the deck on the south side of the building, the relocation of the ramp, and the reconfiguration of the handicap parking spot. Just those 3 items.
I think excuse me, so Brenda had said deck extension, change to parking lot, and landscaping.
That is not the conversation we had. It was just those 3 specific things that were part of the scope of work on the previous
You said that's
permit.
what you'd be requesting final approval of today, and then the arbor facade and trellis would continue with comments as needed.
That's exactly right. So read the first thing you said. That second part was right. What was the first thing you said?
Final approval on the deck extension, change to parking lot, and landscaping.
So
That's
right.
right. That's right.
Just you
It's
use
just the
word
parking lot, and that includes the ramp. Yeah. So the ramp was part. So this is.
Well, I'm very dense, but I'm very confused also.
Okay,
so if you could just show us what you got.
This is, let's do this one second. This is I'll put it down on your table first. It's on top. Put the other one's on top. So this is the project you saw last week.
Okay.
And then what I did, this is the new work that Henry Linney's proposing, and we will talk about that next.
You're talking about
This one now we're going to talk about, and this is going to be what we separated out.
Coming later.
That is coming now as a revision to the existing permit. It's a review after final.
Okay.
These 3 items are review after final because they were already approved as part of the last approval. And we were making just alterations to that particular scope of work.
Okay.
So in order to not lose our construction crew, we've separated those out, and we've been given permission to separate them out as a revision.
Can you do this for me? Can you show me a site plan and then briefly review the items you just told me you're separating out?
This 1-foot extension of the deck, it's coming out 1 extra foot.
Okay.
The landscaping strip is there's still enough to plant, and then this arbor will not be under this revision.
Okay.
But the justification for us decreasing this planter by 1 foot from the previously approved 2 feet was because we're developing and adding a huge amount of green to the project that goes all the way down the driveway in the form of that new arbor that we're going to talk about next.
Okay.
But since they're under construction with this deck, that 1-foot extension is part of the review after final.
Okay.
That's why it's clouded. The ramp that was here and here has now been relocated along the north property line. And now instead of that ramp being here and here, we just moved the parking over, and this planter strip got decreased just slightly in size to accommodate the ramp that now is going there on that north property line.
So this plan is going to show us the ramp over here, but this plan is showing it over here. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. No, I'm telling you that the previous approval that you guys saw had a deck that was approved that was 1 foot less than this ramp.
Okay, but what I asked you,
Then-
though, was I'm trying to get a distinction between the two things that
They're
we're looking
totally
at.
different things. Yeah, different scopes of work. We're only talking about the deck and the ramp
Okay.
now.
For this, for what?
For
this
this
set,
one, for the
this set.
review after final.
Okay.
So those are the only things that we're asking to move forward with, are
Okay.
those things.
Okay.
That's why we separated them out, because that allows us to complete the parking lot. When we complete the parking lot, then we're allowed to open the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So until we complete the parking lot, we can't open the gate to the public parking lot. So, and since we have the construction crew already working on this, that's why we want to do that.
All right.
So,
let's
and that
look at
makes sense to staff too.
Look-
To Brenda.
No comment.
No comment. So that's all we're doing there. It doesn't really translate into drawings because it's, like I said, just a 1 foot. Everything else is remaining the same as it was. The hog fencing was already approved and was already currently under construction. You could read over the minutes from the last meeting one by one, and we can address all those. But I just want to tell you now that the only thing that we're requesting to be separated are those couple of things. Then I'll get into the comments
But
about the arbor.
Okay, but did we comment on what you're asking for approval on with this set?
No.
No, we didn't.
There were
So then
there were
there's
no
no point in
specific
reading them out.
comments. I just separated them out, and that's why I'm telling you.
Okay.
It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the planting. It doesn't.
Right.
It
Okay.
doesn't. It just means that. See, this planter. There's still the same amount of bird of paradise are still here. It just the planter went from like that big to that big.
Okay.
That's that project.
All right. So I think we need to
Yeah.
vote on them one at a time, right?
This is the review after
This
final,
is the review
right?
after final.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But just to make sure, if you want to, Kirk, you can read the minutes to make sure that I'm not missing something. But I don't think there were any specific comments to those 3 items on the minutes.
No, there isn't.
Okay.
About the railing, are you addressing the railings when you move the deck?
The railings were always proposed as hog fencing, and they still are. And
Right, but there was a comment about the lack of uniformity in the railings.
But that was with
That was
the
with the
presentation
next
we
one.
heard last time.
Right.
Which is, we're going to look at next.
Okay, so that's not a part of this project. This
Right.
is review
Well,
after final.
Right.
And just
Okay,
to,
that's
and
fine.
what I didn't quite understand about that comment is I didn't really quite understand that comment because we got the hog fence railing approved in the previous proposal, and the front railing on Anacapa was existing to remain, and it's not a hog fence railing. It's an existing wood picket railing. We've already gotten approval for that. We're not making any changes to the railings.
We saw wrought iron railings in the last drawing, in the drawing that Henry presented. There was some wrought iron.
It might have been artistic license
Okay.
on his sketch.
Okay. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, so that's not a part of this, and this is...
No, and we're not making any changes to the railings that were previously approved.
So this deck got 1 foot bigger this
Mm-hmm.
way, and the planter got 1 foot smaller.
A couple of feet smaller,
Couple of
a
feet
little bit
smaller.
smaller, but it didn't change the planting. But the planting on the landscape plan does reflect the new size.
So let me ask you about, because they are related, one of the representations that was made is that we were going to have vines growing up on this big long trellis, right? Is that going to, that's going to happen? Right, okay, all right. So questions from
So
the
it's
board
actually more landscaping.
on what's being presented right here?
I have one.
Yes, Stephanie?
Why does the driveway planter need to get smaller by a foot?
It needs to get smaller by a foot to accommodate the increase in the deck by a foot. This deck, because it's also an ADA path of travel, will allow for a little shelf, and it'll allow enough people to sit with a glass of wine, because these are wine tasting areas, and they'll be able to sit along there, and it just gives a little bit more room to allow that to be a nice outdoor seating area.
So in other words, I thought you said that the width on this So the width on this driveway, let's go back to the original.
No, actually, it didn't.
Okay,
It didn't. Just
so
the
width-
planter.
So the planter width used to be wider out here, but it didn't? Okay.
This line never moved.
All right.
It just, the deck line moved out so that the
Okay.
planting is a little bit less on in there.
That's all.
Other questions? Scott?
Just one, I want to just reiterate 100% that you guys are doing the arbor project.
Yeah.
Yes.
One question, because I didn't see this before.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the ramp configuration beforehand?
Before there was a small area here, from about here to here, and a landing, and then a larger area from here to here.
Okay.
And so it ramped up,
So you-
landing, and it ramped up.
Oh, okay. So you ramped up this way, and now you're proposing just to put it along the driveway.
Was there planting lost out here because of that? No? What was there before?
This handicap parking spot was shoved over, and the loading zone was the same as the path of travel. You can overlap loading zone and path of travel. So this loading zone, everything shifted over.
Oh,
And-
that's why this.
and that's why
was-
this
That's
got
why
moved.
that,
Okay.
so you just shifted everything over. Okay.
All right. Questions,
That was
Courtney?
my only question.
So has sorry if I'm beating a dead horse, but has the walkway configuration changed since what we saw the last time, not with Henry, but with you?
No, the only thing that changed is that because there's room for the ramp now, that to get to the ramp, you go from the loading zone. Just see that little jog
The
right
little
there?
swoop that was added. Nothing else has changed.
Nothing else
so we've
has
already
changed.
seen that. And that material is concrete, that walkway? Is it a different color than the parking lot, or is it gray?
I think it's just concrete right now. I don't know I can't even remember exactly what we got approved. It might have been a colored concrete previously approved. We're making no changes to the previous approval.
Okay. Then I won't ask any more about that. So the final width of this skinny planter between the deck and the driveway, you've said it's a foot, but is that from face of curb to the edge of the deck, or is it a foot to the back of curb? It's
This
very
skinny planter,
Yeah.
it's a foot.
To what?
It was 2 feet.
A foot to what? The back of curb or the
A
face
foot
of
of
curb?
planter. Let me see if there's a detail. I'll show you. I think there's a detail.
And that's in order to accommodate a 4-foot dimension from the building to the edge of that seat wall.
This is the seat, the white
Just
bar
gained a
there.
foot.
I have one more question.
Thought we had a
Chairman,
detail of that
whenever you-
cantilever.
The chance.
Just start, go here.
I understand that. I'm asking what the dimension is here.
I don't have that, but that's just the planter ends, and because we had the railing used to be here, and we moved it out a foot. That's all we did. So if you look at this detail on A5.0.
But it is an important question, right? Because you have a 6-inch curb that's taking up 12 inches of your planter, then you only have 6 inches of planting. So that's the question: is where exactly does that curb occur?
If you look at the site plan. And there's the shop. And I don't have the previous approval with me. All I know is we moved it out a foot. So if we moved it out a foot and we had 2 feet, we have 2. I understand your question about the curb.
But then the hog fencing doesn't come all the way down. There's a gap between that and the
No, the
finished
hog
grade,
fencing
right?
comes all the way down. It comes down below the deck as well.
Yeah, but there's a 2-inch gap between the bottom of the hog fence and finished grade, which would allow for you to kind of shove the plants in underneath.
Yeah, we did that on purpose. The landscape architect wanted that.
Who is
That
your
little
landscape
gap.
architect?
Kate Dole.
And so, just so I understand, so the dimension between the building face and the edge of that seat is what, 4 feet? But what's your pinch point there on the deck? I don't see a dimension, and I don't have a scale.
I don't see that dimension either. Do you have a scale?
No.
No.
Architectural scale? Please.
And you can look at the previous approval too, if you want to pull those plans out.
So, I don't know if that's the right one or not.
It's 8 to an inch. So right now, the deck is 6 feet to the inside of the hog fence top cap, and before it was 5.
But so the dimension from
bench.
the edge of the bench to the face of the wall is what? That was the
Where
question.
the white space is there.
5 feet.
It's 5 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a bench, it's a shelf, and the shelf is 12 inches deep.
The shelf is intended to be a seat, right?
No, it's just
Did
a
you say
little.
that?
If you look at the detail, it's intended to be a shelf to put your drink on.
Got it. Okay. So standing.
And in order to get enough room to be able to pass by, we had to move the deck out a foot in order to make it more lively, so people could actually sit there.
I have one more question.
So you're saying this distance right here is 5
Finish
feet?
up this way. Then. Howard, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, Stephanie?
Don, is that curb necessary? Can't you just go flush like you did everywhere
Yeah,
else?
and I don't know what. I was just looking for the curve.
It's called out on the site plan as a new concrete curb, 6-inch concrete curb.
Everywhere else, you have it just flush.
Well, here's
Rolling
a
off
clue
into
right here.
the
So this is showing
planter.
10 feet to the face of curb and
Yeah.
11 feet to the edge of deck. So you're actually going to have
That's
6 inches of
6
planting.
Well, the curb is 4 inches.
Okay, so you have 8
So
inches
we have
of
8
planting.
inches of planting.
Okay.
It's not intended to be a huge planter. That's why we're adding the arbor.
Right.
But you would get even more available planting space if the curb was not there. And it's
just
only
cleaner.
in this one
It's cleaner.
area.
I can look at removal of that. It's just cleaner.
You know,
to
I
do
think
it.
the curb will help people
Stay
prevent
on the
from
driveway.
driving into
Mhm.
that. It helps protect.
Okay.
That's what we thought too.
From those wheels going right into the side of your fence, so
Yeah,
building. So I think it's fine.
because it's a narrow driveway
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay, comments? Sure, Scott.
I'm ready to approve it. I think given what they're doing with the arbor, it's a no-brainer to approve it.
Okay. Any other comments? Differing? Okay, would you like to make a motion for us?
Motion to approve the review of the final design.
Second
Second.
by Howard. All in favor, say aye.
Excuse me. So ready to approve a review after final?
I don't know the process.
It is a review. It's this part of the project is a review after final.
This is a second concept review.
No,
Under
that's
this
not what
number.
Brenda
This is
said.
the revisions.
You know what? I'm going to call Brenda down.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Well, we're calling Brenda. Can we move on
Yes,
to the
please, let's do that.
Okay.
I had this conversation with Brenda, and she was really clear about it, so it's good that she's around.
Yep.
So do you want to read the motion from the last meeting?
Sure, we can do that.
Same project, right?
The previous motion continued 2 weeks. The board appreciates the changes made so far to the proposed project. The board finds the proposed arbor acceptable and a charming addition. The majority of the board finds the roof-mounted light trolley appropriate to the project and should be relocated closer to the rear facade. Consider unifying the rail design throughout the project as much as possible. Provide Tier 2 stormwater management program requirements. Provide coastal exemption requirements. And provide window detail.
So the light folly got relocated to the rear. One thing that I'll state while we're on this subject is that it was not clear on Henry's drawing prior to, and when we submitted the last project, that this is the only portion of the building, this rear portion, that's going to be plastered. The rest of the building from here to here is going to remain the gray siding, and this is an existing plaster portion. So no changes to the front elevation, but that plaster portion that's picked up at Coonan Winery is going to be picked up on the back to kind of cap the ends.
Okay.
And the only area that's going to have the parapet wall is going to be the back of the building where there's a funky little roof that it changes roof lines, and that little parapet is going to kind of cap the end of that building and make it special. So when you come in from the parking lot, you won't see the roof beyond, you'll just see the parapet wall.
So the parapet's not returning at all, it's just stopping.
And you won't, it'll read as a parapet wall at the end to kind of cap this kind of odd gable hip roofed end, and that's where the light poly will go.
Okay.
So like I said before, Howard, when he was asking about the railings, it was a misunderstanding of any wrought iron. It was all the hog fencing, not changing, and the front was always a picket fence that is not changing. The window and door details are all on here. And what was the other comment?
Railing design, stormwater management.
That was it.
Railing design, that was
Coastal
it.
exemption requirements.
And I think they got somehow put on here.
Is this a new detail?
This is the detail for the steel trellis, the arbor. It's not attached to the railing. It's a flagpole design that goes into the planter right next to the hog fence railing, separate.
And
Curb is not
but
shown.
the curb is something like that, right?
Here.
Well, it's 1 foot from here, the outside edge of
somewhere
curb,
in
right?
Here. But the flagpole is going right in between there. In that little planter area. And I think there's notes about, there should be notes about stormwater management.
Are there other details that show how that arbor radius?
We don't
and
have
the-
them yet from the structural engineer because this is comments only.
Okay.
That's why we wanted to separate the projects as well, because we don't have any more additional structural details of the trellis.
Okay. It's just that one detail. Okay.
This probably got explained by Henry when he was here, but these are existing antique wood ionic columns, and then there's going to be a sign that's under separate permit. We're doing a sign program. But this location of this unit will replace the approved trellis from the other project. But because it wasn't a change to the design, we kept it in this new permit because it's actually a different trellis.
Where does that occur?
On the back.
Is that to the parking lot?
To the parking lot here. So replaces this one here, and what he should have done, because this is the
I don't think we reviewed that.
That's the first time we've seen that. That's the first time we've seen that.
Oh, it was on the other plans, though. Maybe it didn't get reviewed. But it's going to be right here instead of it. The old trellis that got approved was 6 posts as you entered. But as you come down this ramp, we also felt that because you have to turn a corner and go down. This is a handicap access to 22 Anacapa. We brought the whole thing back, and I'm sorry it doesn't reflect it here. It should. There should be, the new trellis is going to be here, 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 and here. It's going to be the wood columns with a exposed kind of rustic steel beam across, and then that wrought iron cutout sign under the sign permit will be hanging from it. But we brought it back away from the bottom of the ramp so that this area isn't crowded, because we had a meeting with the city and they requested that this area be as open, a little bit more open. So we pulled that back. So that's
Okay,
these.
but this looks like it's, 4 feet 8. I see. Okay.
That landing is 5 feet.
And the
We
height doesn't pose an issue in that location?
No.
Okay. All right. All right. So questions, comments, public comment? Anyone from the hearers? No? So we're into questions from the board. Howard, are you ready with a question or two?
Yeah, just questioning about these fences here, railings. So I'm looking at the proposed north elevation, and I see the hog fence, and I see it several places. And then I see the horizontal rails here in the middle of the building.
Which sheet, Howard? Why don't you come over here and point?
A2.1.
Okay.
The proposed north elevation.
Yep.
In the middle of the building, there is a stair rail and deck rail that is different than the others.
Is that existing?
It's existing, and it's on. There's a fence right next to it, and you can't see it from anywhere. There's the fence. If you look at the site plan, it must be the one that we didn't have to demolish, but because we're putting a fence along the whole north property line, we didn't feel like nobody was going to see it anyway.
Okay.
So.
Other questions?
And then this other railing over here with the crosshatched, whatever it is, lath, yeah.
Is that the AC?
So you're saying that basically these fences are all up against the property
Yeah.
line and another wall, essentially.
A 6-foot-high wood fence is going to go along the north property line. That must be
Your wood
existing.
fence or theirs?
I think that's the AC unit.
And that's, yeah, it's the existing enclosure. Where is that?
So is that your wood fence that you're proposing? Okay, so that's not on the plan, right?
It is the plan. I don't know what number it is.
Looks like
5.
it's a new hog fence. Oh, maybe that's the railing.
5. It's a new fence. It's a wood fence. It was approved on. It was already approved on the previous approval.
Yeah,
Undefined is undefined.
What?
The way it's shown here.
It's just a dog-eared fence. It was on the previous approval. So right now, because we separated them, I think what I need to do is go back and take the ends out of anything that already got approval.
It's existing.
So,
built.
This is already. In fact, this line. I want to comment on this fence and these trees. You just reminded me of something I didn't bring up. But in answer to your question, yeah, there's a previously approved fence that got
Along
a
the
permit
entire property
along
line.
the entire north property line.
Other questions?
I think what his point is
it.
about uniforming the materials.
2 questions.
You're done?
I'm done.
Okay. Courtney?
I just had a question about the new trellis. You said they were salvaged columns? From where?
They're antique. Where are they from,
They're-
Tammy?
They were old. I don't know. But they're metal.
They're metal.
wood,
They're not wood.
They're metal?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're actually right now 12 feet tall.
But are they related to this site at all? Did you find them here, or were they?
We
They're
dumped them
just
out of the ground. No, just kidding.
They may have come from the building somewhere. They were in storage on
Okay.
site. So
They're 500 years old.
Well, I asked because it seems. Yeah, do you have any more? I asked because I'm curious to know, where that styling comes from.
Yeah.
If it's related
it's just
to
part of
anything else.
it didn't come from the existing building, and the whole concept is a little funky to go with the funk zone.
Right.
So they just wanted to
Feeling
use
that.
them because they were really cool. And I asked him for photos of them, and he
do you
didn't
not
give them to
have
me.
them? I probably
You
have.
have it?
Well, you keep going. I'll see if I can find photos of them.
And then the other question I had was related to the height of the trellis across the driveway. Is that
The big one.
here? Is this a specific height requirement, I would assume, for fire or something?
Well, when we get the structure from the engineer, but this is what looks good from an arch standpoint, instead of it being a shallow arch. It just wants to be an arch like this, more of a traditional arch. we felt.
But it's not drawn based on any specific height requirement, or this, the low dimension there to there is not.
I think it's
You don't have
It
any
wasn't designed
minimums
that
there
way.
for
We don't
clearance?
have to, we're definitely going to meet our required clearances through there.
Do you
But
meet them or exceed them?
we meet or exceed them. I don't know what it is drawn. We don't have this lantern designed yet. I can
But
tell you what
mean,
it is
how
right
did you
now.
determine how to draw it other than it looks good that way?
If I had to speak for Henry, who's not here, I would have to say that it looked good that way. And it's drawn now at 9.5 feet up.
Okay. That's all I have.
Just so I'm clear, right now this building is wood on the front, right? So, but for I guess the previous project, you got it permitted to do the plaster? Is that
No,
right?
that's part of this project.
Because right now it's wood, right?
Right now, it's all this kind of funky wood, or
It's almost like a siding.
It's almost like
Right.
Like a hardy board.
So
Yeah,
then
it's almost
under
like a hardy
the
board.
permit, you already got the plaster that was included in
No,
that? No,
that's part of
that's
this
part of
permit.
this. Okay, that was my one question.
Scott, no questions?
Okay.
Stephanie?
Raymond sent pictures, and I'm not sure that
Is
this
for
puts them in their
conceptual
best
or is this
light.
for preliminary design
These are
approval?
the
We cannot
columns.
give it project design approval, we can just make comments. That's all we can do today.
Yeah.
They're kind of cool.
They're very cool.
You
They're
know, I
amazing.
mentioned this last time, and then you kind of fell flat. I like the design of the funnel lake, but there's not really shown here on this drawing. And I mentioned that the dark sky thing and how that incorporates or is affected. I love the originality of it, but I don't.
We're just in the questions at the moment, but if you want to, I think we can go into comments.
Oh, wait,
Mr.
wait,
Chair?
Sorry.
Okay.
I had one more question that I didn't ask. Where did the light go?
Yeah, that's what I was getting.
I mean,
at.
I don't understand what I'm looking at now. So
You know what?
could describe that?
I don't really know what that's going to look like yet. I haven't met with Henry about it.
All right.
We like the idea. We don't really know what it's going to be. We know that it has to meet the nighttime lighting guidelines, and so we're not there yet.
Okay. It'll be ambient, not to be seen from the moon.
Okay. It'll have to be, capped.
Okay, Susan, help us out.
So, Mr. Chair, Brenda Bells had discussed how this approval was going to be split into two. So I believe before you were looking at the other set of plans.
We were.
And Board Member Whittosh was in the middle of a motion for final approval of a review after final, and I don't think that's correct.
Well, Scott was making the motion, but
Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was Howard. Okay,
So
sorry.
how should we word it then?
Well, I believe it's just giving final approval to those three elements that you and Brenda discussed. So it was the deck extension, the change to the parking lot, and the landscaping. But I don't know where the review after final came in, because this is under application MST 2014-00635. That's the only application that you're looking at today.
I don't care how you guys do it, as long as we're able to move forward with those three items into. That was the intent of separating it so we can move forward.
Okay, but that's why I went and got Brenda, because you were
Ex-agenda
being
item.
very insistent on it being a review after final.
That's what you and I talked about, is a revision to the existing permit.
Right, but under this MSD, it can just be
That's fine.
a final approval.
When we discuss revision to the existing permit, in my head, I think of it as a review after final. But I don't care whatever. If you want to call it as separation of this current MST number, that's fine too.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
So it's
So
not
you
a
can-
review after final, even
Pardon?
though this project's been given a final approval,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're coming back with changes, it's not a review after final?
No, it's a new application.
It's a new application?
Yeah.
Okay.
Procedurally, it's a new application. They submitted plans and opened up this master app number with this project
New-
description.
okay.
Excuse me, that doesn't seem right, because I've just been through this process twice already. If you have an approved permit and you make field changes, and the people say, okay, you can't, we will stop this job until you get the field changes reviewed after final. So you come back, and if it's an SFDB or an ABR or whatever.
We took it in
It's the way
as
they,
it was
it's the way they took it in.
as they submitted it. We
So-
took it in from the applicant as it was
So
submitted.
It's a remodel.
And
It's a
if you-
remodel.
And we tried to submit the whole thing as a review after final, but staff's position, and it's valid,
That's a different thing.
is
Okay,
that
that's fine.
since we added some things, they wanted a whole new MST number. So that's what we did.
Okay.
Even though it's confusing because some of this stuff already got approval.
What happened to that first set?
It's right here.
Okay, so let's finish that, voting on that motion that Scott made,
So what's the motion
Motion for final approval.
as submitted.
of the?
The design as submitted.
MST, blah, 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 whatever it is.
I don't know the MST number.
Non-review after final
Okay.
project.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. See how easy that is? Now, we need a motion for this project. We're just into comments on this project, which has a separate MST number, from what I'm
Both
being
have
told by the
to-
applicant.
They both have.
No? They have the same. They have the same
MST.
number.
We're
Okay.
approving
They're
final
both-
for a portion of the one MST number.
Right. The first
Okay,
the
all right.
approval that you just offered or granted was for those 3 items that I had said.
Okay.
And now you're discussing the remaining item, and are you also giving that approval?
We're into comments.
You don't know yet.
Stephanie.
Okay, thank you.
My comments are only that we need more detail on the trellis and the light and the light fixtures that go on the trellis.
Okay. Scott, comments?
Just reiterating that I think the trellis is marvelous, and agree with Stephanie about more details.
Okay. Amy, any comments?
I agree. I like the concept for the arbor, but I don't necessarily think like the plaster fits in with the wood.
It's interesting because even though it plaster.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're not in a discussion mode right now. We're just collecting comments.
Okay, sorry.
And I'd like to see more detail for the roof lantern.
The light bulb.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But you would prefer sticking with the existing building material as opposed to introducing a new one?
Mhm.
Okay. Courtney?
I agree with most of the comments. I would also add that I think the trellis over the driveway is reading a little tall, and maybe that's just a function of the drawing because it's so heavily covered in vines, but it just feels a little too oppressive. That's all I have.
Okay.
I agree with most of the comments that have been made. I have a concern with the drawings, not because of the design. The design's very interesting and very charming, but I don't feel that I am seeing what I'm going to get here. For example, this north property line, which has a fence, a wood fence on it, is not depicted on the plans. I have no idea what's happening in that yard between the building and the property line, as shown on the plans. The fact that we see 3 different railing materials there, but all of these abut a
Okay.
5-foot-high fence.
A concise comment.
Well, that's pretty concise. Okay. Anyway, that's one concern. The other one is the trellis, charming though it is, and the light fixtures are. I don't see how fire trucks or tall vehicles are going to get in and out of there.
They're not.
Secondly, I don't think the poles that support this arbor in their footings and so forth occurring every 20 feet, 15 feet, they're going to take up that planter space, that 6-inch planter space. And there's not going to be enough room to put that footing and those poles in there next to this extended deck. So there's going to either have to go, your deck is going to have to go around those poles, or you're going to have to somehow create more space for the poles. The drawings on A5, which there was another A5 here, the previous one, where it don't show the curb, the footing, and really what's happening there along the driveway as you transition into the hog fence.
So more
I think
detail
that's-
is needed for those.
I think we need a detail of that. That's all I have to say.
All right. Yeah, I was just going to add that was one of the concerns I had is it seems like this could be finessed more than what's indicated here so that the footing does not become a visible element. I'm not sure exactly how you do that, but so here's the comments I'm saying. The board is, or that I'm hearing. The board is in general in favor of the proposed architectural revisions to the but needs to see more detail to make a full judgment. Some board members had concerns about the plaster as a building material.
Is it more than one?
I'm just saying some. We're just into comments at the moment. We're not granting approval of anything. I'm just.
Are these your summary comments though in the motion when it gets?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Unless another board member wants to make a motion.
I just asked because I didn't hear any other board members mention the plaster besides one board member.
Okay.
Would you be another one? Is that why you said some?
Maybe we should let the motion be made and then address comments afterwards.
Procedurally, that's the way we normally do it. So we have a comment about, in general, the board is in favor of the project. Unless another board member wants to make a motion, I'm proposing that this would be our motion. Some board members had concern about the plaster as a building material. And I think the definition of, this was brought up last time, definition of how the plaster facade meets the metal or the current siding needs to be defined as one of the details. Depiction of all the features of the project would be helpful, such as fencing. Concern about the height of the trellis and the lanterns associated with it. Some board members felt it might be too high. Some were concerned about clearance. Study hiding or refining the detail for the footings of the trellis posts.
And the post detail itself.
Yeah, the detail of the planter transition, curb planter transition to the hog fence along the driveway there. That's a very critical area. It is not depicted on the plans.
Okay.
That would be my add to that.
All right. So would someone like to make that motion?
I guess I'll make the motion.
Howard. It was seconded by someone?
Second.
By Scott.
So what's the motion? Is it indefinitely continued?
When would you guys like to come back?
Continued, you want 1 week, 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks for this is, by the way, comments, right? We're not really.
That's right. It's just comments.
This is a comments only.
We would like you to come back when you've solved the other issues so that we're not just making comments again. We'd like to have you come back when we can actually give you an approval.
Well, it depends on, doesn't it say environmental assessment?
Tier 2 stormwater.
Yeah.
And coastal review.
Yes, that needs to be taken care of, so I don't know.
We have to have the coastal exemption before we can come back and get preliminary approval?
Final, you need it for final.
But not for preliminary?
Correct.
So the next time, if it goes on the agenda in 2 weeks, it won't say comments only?
Well, you still need let's see. It doesn't need planning commission or staff hearing officer, so you could come back and get project design approval without the SWIMP or the coastal, but then you'll need it for final.
Okay.
Yes.
2 week continuance and comments only with 2 week continuance would be great.
I agree.
I'd like to
And
add
then before you take a vote, I do want to say one more thing I forgot to say in my presentation. Quick thing.
Scott, go ahead.
Okay. I would just like to add one comment to the motion. I'd like to see the full structural design for the column so we can see exactly what the sizes are.
We're working on that right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one comment I wanted to make is that these trees on our site plan showed up on the adjacent parcel, but we got a survey of the north property line, and the trees, the property line disrupts the trunk of the trees. We want to keep the trees, and the property line runs right through the trees. It's a little bit more on the adjacent 32 Anacapa project, but they aren't as they're depicted on here after the survey came in. So because of the maturity of the trees and what it does to the rear parking lot, we don't want to remove the trees. And
All right.
I'm saying that now because I think the next project you're going to see is a proposal for this property, and I don't know what they're proposing, but I just want to let you know that these trees have been surveyed now, and the property line does run through and disrupts the trunk of those trees.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor of the motion?
Mr. Chair, can I just read through those real quick,
That'd be
just to
great.
make sure I have everything? Okay, so ABR in general was in favor of the proposed architectural revisions, but needs to see more detail to make a full judgment. Some were concerned with plaster as a building material. You'd need a detail on how the facade meets the metal. Plans need a depiction of all features, parentheses, such as fencing. I didn't hear any others in there. Concerned with the height of the trellis and lantern regarding clearance and appearance. Study refining the details for trellis posts and footings, and you need a detail of the curb planter transition to the hog fence. Is that correct? Yeah, and that's what. And then continued 2 weeks to the full board. Is that correct?
Yep. I would just add. Okay, sounds like we have a couple of other additional.
Well, no, I was just commenting on the plaster. It was plaster to the wood, not
to the
the
wood.
metal.
Well,
siding.
it's-
Yeah, plasters to the siding, not the metal.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the only
That's
thing
how it
I
meets the
caught.
siding.
Well, that's what I was going to comment on, is that there's a number of conditions there. The plaster is meeting the roof, how the new facade meets the existing facade and all its features. That's what we need defined.
Okay, so existing facade in all of its features.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Amy, did you have another one?
No, that was
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Scott had asked for the structural details for the trellis as well. I don't know if we want to add
Scott
that,
asked
or if
that.
that's understood based on the comments as they are.
Are the structural details going to be required to get preliminary?
No.
Not structural details. We want more the shape of the arch. We want to see it not covered in
And you're
vines.
addressing your comments
Yeah.
about the proportion
Yeah.
and the clearances and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can see the rest of that in final, but you're right.
Okay. All in favor of the motion as read out? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Sorry,
you so
you.
much.
a lot going on.
So we're on to item 4,
Bringing this down.
or 3 rather, which is about a half hour late. 32 Anacapa Street. This is another continued item. Proposal to permit as-built uses in an existing 4,000 square foot commercial building.
There's 3 here.
And this was last reviewed in October. I think I'll read the whole description here. Includes 2 ADA accessible ramps, new deck areas of about 1,000 square feet, door and window changes, interior alterations for restaurant bar in Unit C, and addresses violations identified in an enforcement case. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Misael Contreras. So the comments from the last presentation, the last review, number 1 was to study the southeast corner where the ADA ramp, trash enclosure, and deck meet to either save the red flowering gum or add a new tree around the trash enclosure area.
This has been a while since we've looked at this. Are all board members remembering this project and familiar with it?
No.
No. Can you just kind of briefly go over the scope?
Sure.
Yep.
So this is a violation case where they opened up a winery without permits, and They also added these as-built decks around, which are the ones that we're
Susan,
proposing to
sorry, I'm
demolish.
sorry to interrupt. Could we break out the photos also?
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. So currently this is Courts and Crowns, Drake's Winery, and this one's vacant, which we're proposing to do a sit-down restaurant. So this is the front facade, and which we're not doing anything to. This is this north facade, where we're adding 2 decks. We're extending the deck to provide ADA access from Anacapa Street.
Okay.
And this is the far end from the rear. This is the view from the rear parking lot of this.
Okay.
Side. So, and then this is the whole. These are images of the driveway, of the building from the driveway. Just walking down here, and you can see there's some banana trees, elderberries, all along here that are pretty, pretty mature. Those are pretty big.
And you're keeping
And
those,
we're
but you're putting a deck
proposing
around them.
Correct. And then finally, this is the driveway, or the parking lot, where we're proposing to restripe, clear coat. And this tree is currently impeding traffic to be able to turn around, which is this one right here.
Is that asphalt driveway?
Yes. So we're proposing to remove it, and in order to make up for that, we're proposing a new jacaranda right in this new planter, where there will be bicycle parking as well, and some of the banana trees that were going to be in the way, we're going to propose to put adjacent or next in that same planter next to that tree.
Okay. So then as you were starting off to address our comments from last time, do you want to go on with that?
Sure. Well, there's another element or aspect
Okay.
to this project. As you saw in the previous presentation, there's an opening, a connection from the city parking lot into this 20 Anacapa, into this property, and they're also proposing to extend the opening in that fence so that there's also access into our property as well. And what we've done is we moved the trash enclosure to this to the back here and pulled it back so that people can get through. And we're proposing a new trellis structure that kind of goes over this access way.
Okay.
So it creates the same feel of an entrance through the rear, and we're also providing an accessible railway here. So in my previous presentation, we had it up against the building. Now we're moving it over here.
And that's...
So that would be right where the trash is currently. We're just creating an enclosure around it.
Okay.
So that was actually another one of the comments. It said to study the trellis structure on top of the trash enclosure. So instead of having just a trellis over the walls, I'm proposing this trellis structure in front of the trash enclosure, which you'll see. Provide an elevation of it. Another one of the comments was to study the rail detailing for variation and to match the existing skirt detail. So we've looked at the railing detail and matched it so that the wood goes all the way down, the skirt goes all the way down. And we've provided variation on the driveway side. All this won't be seen since it's on the north side and there's a chain link fence that just divides the two properties. So the railing that will be visible to the public is the one that's adjacent to the driveway. So this is the new railing that we're proposing, where we have corrugated metal panels flanking the entrances to each of the tenant spaces. And we have here, here, and here.
Was that proposed last time?
No, before it was just all wood rail all the way across.
Okay. All right. The red flowering gum tree, I missed that, how you were addressing that issue.
We're proposing a jacaranda to make up for it over here.
Oh, okay. All right. So does that conclude your presentation?
And yeah, well, we had a landscape architect come out, and this is what he recommended, as well as installing drip system irrigation for all the new plantings so that they can take growth.
Okay. All right, so we're into public comment. Seeing no one from the public who wishes to comment on this project, we're into questions from the board. Stephanie?
Comment, questions?
No questions. Scott?
Can you go over the detail or how you think you might construct that corrugated metal balcony rail edge?
Sure. So I have drawn a detail for the railing where there's the wood pickets. So for the corrugated metal, it'll just take the place of the center picket, and I would still keep the stops, the 1 inch, the 1 by 1 stops, and put the corrugated metal in between.
Got it. Okay.
Amy?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Courtney?
I'm confused about the design of the trellis and its relationship to the trash enclosure. So it appears that you're adding a trellis essentially in front of the trash enclosure. Is that right?
Correct.
So what is the thinking there?
Well, this is going to be one of the main entries, the one from the Garden City parking lot. So people will walk through here with trumpet vines growing. So it'll create kind of a nice, covered arbor here.
Can we look at the site plan here?
Of course.
So the trellis is here, and you have your accessible route immediately adjacent. So why would somebody walk this way into oncoming traffic when they could walk just right next to it on the clearly delineated accessible route?
Well, this is not a very busy street. Not many cars come back here. It's only mostly employees. So this will be, most of the time will be clear of traffic. So this would provide a nice entrance, I think, and they would choose to walk through here as opposed to this, which is mainly reserved for ADA.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just going to say, couldn't the accessible route go under the trellis? And
Yeah.
maybe you can make the trellis a little bigger or not?
Well, we have to provide this for a landing
I see,
for
yeah.
ADA, and so the ADA basically branches off of that. The
Okay.
accessible route. Yeah, I would like to widen this, but we can't have anything
You can't
protruding
encroach
over
the
to
post
this.
into that loading
No.
zone, right?
Not to be clear.
And then can you explain again how you addressed, any possible way of keeping that tree? Did you study this?
Yeah, I
mean,
went
how
back
did
and
that
forth
go?
several emails with transportation. It was Steve Foley, and he was just saying the trees have to go. But I managed to keep one of them, just diagramming how that turn will be able to work for this spot.
But did you look at alternative configurations for the ramp?
Yeah, we pulled this back, and it's still, this turn is what determines the amount of parking spaces, and we're down to the minimal 9 with the 180A spot.
What's happening with this man door? It looks pretty close to the tree.
Yeah, that's just to bring, since the trash pickup isn't, they don't all come out the same day, they come on alternate routes. I had to provide a door so that this bin can be taken out on that specific pickup date.
Have you reviewed this with the staff?
Yeah,
handles
Karen
of trash?
downtown and Marburg as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no way that this could shift back?
We had it originally back here, but looking at how the public will come, instead of just coming in from a very narrow, walkway, we decided to pull it back 4 feet, and hopefully, the neighbors will do the same, so that we create, at least some type of landing there.
You don't have a view looking from this side towards this?
One
photos.
question related to this.
Okay.
There are doors right here.
Right.
Do you need this one also, or can you just use these?
No, yeah, I would still need these to be able to get this one out.
I
when the
think
pickup
this one will be picked up on a day where these two aren't. So in order to get that guy out, it's got to slide that way. Okay. Can you show me on the plan where the opening is, the limits of the opening to the parking lot within the fence along this property line? Where does
where does the actual opening?
Yeah.
It's going to be 9 feet. So this is actually still going through the city, and we met with the project manager in charge of this city parking lot, and he just gave me the plan. So I believe it's right to here, since there is a tree here, which is limiting our opening. So I believe this is the line right here.
The line of what?
Of where the opening will be. It goes from here to about here. It's a 16-foot opening. Let's see. This is 8-inch. There we have 9 feet on ours. So yeah, it's basically where that was.
And then I know we talked about this the last time, but I don't see it on the plan, and I don't recall what the size and species are of these other large trees.
Oh, these are to remain.
Right. But do you know what they are?
I believe this is also a eucalyptus.
Or if you have a photo, we can look at them.
There should be photos.
I'm just trying to get a larger picture of all of the existing, skyline or, large shade trees that you've got back there, which is difficult to tell.
I may have some on my phone.
You have other questions?
They both be eucalyptus. That's all I have.
Okay. Howard?
This is comments, right?
Questions.
These are questions. These two trees, one of which you are calling to be removed, are those trunk diameters and exact locations by a survey that you can produce?
Well, actually, they were not. They were just measured on site and drawn according to site measurements. However, from the previous presentation, which I just heard about, that they are actually closer to the property line than are shown.
That would make a difference as to whether it would have to come out or not. Sam, that's an important question. Okay.
That's the only question I have.
Okay, and I just have one. The trellis design has a kind of Spanish detailing to the beam cut. Is there some precedent that you were going off of reason that you felt like that went with the building, or?
I thought, it's at first we were looking at the next door trellis, the one at 28 Anacapa, and while theirs are more minimal, I wanted to provide some differentiation, give the person coming in, give them an option.
Some sort of identity, you mean?
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Right.
All right. Okay, so comments from the board. Stephanie.
Well, it seems like we need more information regarding the trees along the property line and whether or not they're on the property line or not. It seems like it would make a difference.
Yes.
The ramp location, I think, still could be pushed towards the southwest, towards the Anacapa Street side of the building, because it's pinched down quite a bit in that parking lot. And whether the trees are in that exact location or not, I think it gives you a little more breathing room for drivers and people walking through that area. I think that the trellis and the trash enclosure structure needs a little study. It does seem rather heavy-handed, the trellis structure itself, and not in keeping with the style of the existing building.
Okay. Thank you. Scott?
I think that Stephanie had great comments, and I concur.
Thank you. Amy?
I agree with the comments. The only one I would add would be the corrugated metal in the railing. Just seeing a detail, I guess, of what the proposed design is, just because I think the wood might make more sense, but just having some more definition to look at the design.
Okay. Courtney?
I agree with what's been said. I would like to see the trash enclosure shifted back towards the property line 4 feet. If you've got that trellis there, that calls attention to where people might want to go. So I think you can gain that additional 4 feet and give yourself a little bit more space between that man door and the tree. I think there is an opportunity to both shift the ramp at that northeast corner of the building south, but also shrink the width of it. It appears to be much wider, maybe 6 feet wide. It aligns with the width of the deck, but I think there's an opportunity there to potentially squeeze that width dimension, and then potentially that gives you enough turning radius to keep that other eucalyptus.
Eucalyptus or gum?
They're one and the same.
Okay.
I guess this is sort of a question, but you're calling out vines to be planted on that trellis in front of the trash enclosure, but I don't see a planter there. So how do you intend to plant those? Or is there a planter?
The floor comes out about 3 inches, 4 inches, where the column meets the base of the floor. So just enough to be planted there.
So you've got a pocket essentially cut out of the paving there?
Right.
And what's the dimension again?
It's roughly 3 to 4 inches.
Okay, so we'll need a minimum of, what's the column dimension? Is it 6, 8? I would say minimum, absolute minimum, 8 to 12 inches for those vine pockets.
Courtney, is that, and the applicant too, is the spring line for the radius of the what parking radius for a car, is that, and it's, I guess, is dictated by starting with parking space 1 and then kind of going backwards from that, and that's where you come up with the spring line along the driveway. Obviously, you could get a car to go this way a little more at an angle and start that radius sooner, but I don't know if that means you could get into this parking space or not in one move, or you would have to do a 3-point turn. So that's the study that I guess you may have already done with transportation.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my comment was related to, as you said, shifting the ramp and narrowing it so that you can start that turning movement sooner.
Right, and if the tree is not actually where it's shown, all of that could change. So let's finish.
And
Howard,
then that's another comment too. Just show the accurate locations of the trees on the plan.
I agree with the comments made, in particular about shifting the ramp and establishing the exact actual location of these trees so that you can make your turning movements without cutting the tree down. And the other thing is I think the organization of the parking and the bicycles and the accessible parking space is mixed up and reversed. Normally the athletic people, you could probably put them anywhere, but the accessible parking really wants to be close to the ramp and close to the building so they don't have to run across the parking lot. And I do think that the trellis needs to be studied. It's not only heavy-handed and I don't understand how it relates to the style of the building, but it's kind of a rather elaborate thing in the middle at the end of a parking lot that announces a gateway to trash. I mean, it's somehow doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Just end of my comments.
Would someone like to make a motion then, or
I can make a motion.
All right, Scott. Thanks.
Motion, or the comments are as follows. Study shifting the rear ramp to the south and possibly making it narrower. Survey the existing trees to be removed locations. Study possibly moving the trash enclosure 4 feet closer to the rear property line. Provide a detail for the corrugated railing. And provide a study of moving the ADA parking stall to the other side of the parking lot. Do you want to come back in 2 weeks, or?
We could do 2 weeks.
Okay, so we need a seconder to that motion?
I'll second it, and if the maker of the motion would also like to add, study the trellis detailing size and style, and
to be more in keeping with the existing building?
Mm-hmm. And also its function in that location, just the circulation through the site in that northeast corner of the site.
So you say study the function of it in that location?
Yes, yeah. The function, style, the detail.
Yeah,
and I would also add the comment about surveying provided survey for the tree location, that it should include existing building corners and property lines so that any defining elements in relation to the trees are also understood.
And then just to clarify for the applicant, we think we're giving you ideas to improve your project, and if they can't work, come back and show us why they can't work, and then we can talk about it.
Sorry.
Also for clarification, I was wondering if we should add more specific direction that we are looking for a design that allows the existing trees to remain.
That is a big priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could we also, Scott, ask for more photographs of the rear portion of the property line and where it meets the
great idea.
The adjacent property and the city parking lot?
So that would be the northeast corner?
Yes.
Yes.
Just half a dozen photos of that area would be great.
Half a dozen.
Yeah. Should do it.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, 110 South Hope Avenue. Another continued item. This was reviewed in December. Proposal for facade upgrade of Building H in La Cumbre Plaza.
Same set. We updated graphics only.
Okay.
Just to present a little better.
agree then, Stephanie.
Okay.
So, I mean, the set will be the same if that's if that
fine.
helps. We'll have the same set.
Greetings, go ahead. Your name, please.
Good evening. Ryan Mills with DMHA. We were here last December for the first time, and we had most of the massing complete. Details are still in progress, which we'd like to take the next couple weeks to still refine. The nature of the first meeting was really a study of two main areas. It was this corner of Building H, as well as there was one Toys R Us facade that was not detailed well. So quick, I think everyone that's here, maybe perhaps you weren't. So quick recap is, so La Cumbra Plaza, the back parking lot side is Building H. It's the largest mall. So we're looking at renovating really the parapets around the top. The facades, the tricky part about these projects, as we've seen, is the tenant storefronts we really don't get to touch. So the challenge is how to create the new building facades and kind of working in the existing storefronts. So we'll do a quick tour around, but really the focus is this is that J. Jill corner that we went back and studied, as well as inboard. There was one more, the Toys R Us. And we have photos if we want to go back to look at those facades a little closer.
We had pretty specific comments.
Sure.
Last time you were here, December 8th. I'll just read them out. Number one, the board appreciates the improvements at the mall and the work on building D and H. Study. Number two, study opportunities to create more interest at the corner entrance near the J. Jill retail store. Why don't we look at that, and then we'll go on to the other ones.
So here's the existing condition. We have one of those porticos and an inboard entry to J. Jill. What we're doing is expanding the square footage. Last visit we had, I think the comment was it was a somewhat repetitive or plain corner, no break in height or accentuation at the corner. So what we've done is really per structural and square footage, we can't add any more square footage to our project, so we've maxed out what's allowable on the site. So we've furred out this corner about 18 inches to let this read and break this facade, as well as raised the height at the corner. Here's just a quick, let's see, where am I?
The roof plan?
Well, let me go to I have the enlarged. That'll help us. Here's one. This is the Paseo, the east-west elevation of the J. Jill. So you can see. So we furred this out, brought one of the main entries this outward, and pushed, or this component's maybe 30 feet back. So this corner reads a little taller. We'll dress this cornice detail up. We're working on like a double clay tile detail and push them outboard to get shadows and try to get as authentic as we can here, and then let the lower levels be the same profile but not necessarily capped with clay tile. We're introducing two new storefronts to that side to really liven up. That's one of the goals we have throughout these projects, is to open up the side paseos. And then let me show you what that looks like. I think it's best explained here. It really helps describe. So here's the parking lot. This is existing tower element. So here's the east-west facade. So we're introducing all these new storefronts. And this corner element pushes out that direction, turns the corner at the same height, and we transition back down to an existing parapet height with a chimney element. And we're working on these details, but thought it was a nice way to transition the two heights. And we pushed up about 18 inches from the existing height we had last go around. And, you know, we want to give that presence, but we don't like getting too high out there because we're limited on how far back we can return those corners. We want that to look authentic, but around 8 feet or so, we really reach our structural limits. So 18 we thought was a good place where we tested, and we couldn't really see them terminate. And and then otherwise just freshen up the rest of the facades, new storefronts, and new awnings. So that's how we addressed this corner.
Would these be white, the way they're shown here?
That's what we're proposing currently. Yeah, so this will be like a tan buff color with like a white linen awning.
What's the return on this side that we can't see?
18 inches.
Oh, between faces, 18 inches.
But above the roof?
The parapet above, we can get to about 8 feet.
8 feet is fine.
8 feet return. Back over the roof.
Okay. Let's see. Number 3, provide more shadow relief along the pedestrian walkway.
Well, that's something actually I've been thinking about a lot. I think, was that Tip's comment about undulation down the Paseo?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I remember.
Tip, yeah.
And let me go to the site. So we study that, spend a little time out, as well as other locations, and we're actually pretty satisfied with how much things push in and out. In fact, we almost find this view oblique gets pretty busy. So we were talking about, and part of it was removing the canopies. Well, that we all agreed that the canopies are removed, and it's creating really a downtown street facade patchwork. So as far as shadows, we spent time out there. We have one view that shows. May have one more view. I mean, here's just a couple as you look through. There's lots of ins and outs and heights. So we were really comfortable with comparing this to any other little downtown locations or neighborhoods. Typically on a commercial frontage, it's pretty flat to the sidewalk. So that we didn't really change anything. Besides, these depths, there's different depths of entries throughout and different types of canopies.
This is part of your new proposal right here, right? These elements are being pushed out and added. This current proposal.
Well, these are existing.
Okay.
So those are existing, and we're capping them. So we're removing the canopy. Currently goes right to the top of that line.
Okay.
And so when this gets removed, we're putting back essentially this second-story face, new windows, and then capping it back with a little shed roof on top of that.
How many tiles do you think you can get there? A couple tiles?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So another comment, number 4, was restudy the roof details of Toys R Us.
Yeah. So this is the most challenged one. So we had to go back and work with ownership, work with the tenants, and again, since we can't, here's the existing condition, here's our canopy, and I know the board, all of us, I felt we're a little uncomfortable with how thin. It's meant to be Spanish, but all the corners and stucco elements are very, very thin. So the short answer is we're not allowed to touch this, anything below this line. So here's something we came up with. It's inboard. It's a little more of a contemporary take. We don't need to be Spanish on just strictly interior storefront. So what we're proposing now is redo the parapet above, keep that existing opening, and then band it with like a perforated metal panel, like Quart 10 metal, that is held just off. So it's essentially a screen that this is out about 2 feet that can band that transom, essentially, allow light to still pass through from the inside. So the interior experience doesn't change, but really disguises that element. So, maybe just an inch or so off, just furred out, as a way to disguise that. So we can't thicken up these elements, but we can perhaps change the style of the storefront. Is sort of the approach we took. So up here we imagine it's we'd like to do like fiber cement paneling, line it up with the storefront as it makes sense, and pick like a light taupey gray or off-white, and we'd like to try the Quart 10. Quart 10 sort of ties in nicely with the clay terracotta color we've found in some projects. So that's how we addressed Toys R Us.
Okay. Provide different cornice details at each of the parapets.
So that's forthcoming. So What's important to us, what we'd be asking for tonight is a project design approval to release consultants while we then, spend the time to go. In the next 2 weeks, we could go through and develop all the details. All of our wall sections are completed, but we have to, like at J. Jill, we've developed a profile, but we'll go through and specifics of details we'd like to come back to the board with.
Okay.
And fixtures and finishes.
All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
Seeing no one in the public that wishes to comment on this project, we'll go to questions from the board. Howard.
I have no questions. Good presentation.
Amy.
No questions.
Scott.
A few questions.
Okay.
Can you explain to us what this detail is? It looks a little industrial. Maybe it's wood and it's beautiful and.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's meant to be. We don't. In a few places, we've introduced false windows, and we feel like they've been fairly successful out here. There's been a couple in the back parking lots, and the details. You need enough depth to put a real window in a real wall and have a few inches and paint it out. Here, these are intended to be much like, maybe I have a photo, meant to be smaller, more like a vent, like a decorative vent. So this is a slanted sill. Let me go to the larger elevation, that might be helpful. Slanted sill
like
with a wood
grill.
frame and a louvered wood.
Okay.
In this case, we proposed wood. So here's the scale, but slanted sill, deep opening with a wood framed grill. Louvered grill is what I'm proposing there.
And then the other question is wrapping the Toys R Us plaster and brake metal totally off limits, in between the windows?
I'm sorry,
Where you've got plaster.
again.
So these details here is wrapping that in some sort of brake metal to consolidate it as the same color as the windows. A possibility to kind of unify that and make it feel more like a storefront rather than little strips of plaster.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I mean, a couple times we've had to go back and we work ownership, work with tenants, and it's a very sensitive topic, kind of messing with that 14-foot line and below. I can bring that question up. My sense is no.
Okay.
We've been told to steer clear.
Well, you're kind of doing it already. You're putting a big thing below the 14-foot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But this is what it
kind of a
took these
compromise.
last 2 months for ownership and tenants to get this far. So I could definitely ask that question because I like that idea. But this is as far as we could push this go around.
Okay. My questions.
Just like to take a straw vote from the board. How many board members are comfortable with the contemporary approach to the Toys R Us? Not necessarily all the detailing, but the fact that it's contemporary as opposed to Hispanic. Okay.
So, how many? 3 out of?
I'm okay with. I'm not sure that is quite working just yet,
Out of
but I'm
5.
okay with the notion of a contemporary piece.
Okay.
Is that perforated grill, is it like this or is it vertical?
Vertical.
And it's
So
spaced out?
it's like a screen. So it's
Spaced
just
out from the wall?
Yeah, no more than an inch. So again, because we'd like to turn the corner, and we have usually little gaps between buildings, but we can't encroach in our neighboring
But behind the
storefronts
screen,
either.
the arched window still does the same
Correct.
thing. Yeah.
Correct. So it'll be a fine enough perf so you don't see that from the outside.
Got
Do
it.
we have a
Yes,
picture
Amy.
of what it looks like right now?
Sorry.
Do you have a picture of what it looks like right now?
Yes. Scott, maybe we can at least paint it. Because you get the aluminum trim and just a little bit of stucco. I'll ask.
Okay.
I'm not sure what we can do there.
Questions from Stephanie?
Yes. Going back to that Pottery Barn facade, and do you have a section through that facade?
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah. see, here we are. Oh, actually, we have a room probably for a few tiles.
I think that this was what Tip was asking for, more like if there could be corbels here or do an overhang with raptor tails or something to get more depth and more shadow on this. I think that was the nature of that comment the last time. Just to get a little more tile shown there, but it remains to be seen how many tiles you're actually going to get there. But any kind of irregularity of the tile along that facade to get some more interesting shadow lines and depths would be encouraged.
Okay.
I also have a question. I have a question about the perforation on the metal. Is that irregularly perforated or is it regularly perforated?
I don't have, we wanted to put this idea before the board because this was the only solution we could find with all the involved parties. So what I'd want is a fairly tight perforation. So from the exterior as it's lit.
Regular or irregularly perforated?
Probably,
like random or regular?
I'm just thinking now, probably regular.
Okay.
So I don't think it would be some organic design. I think it would be fairly regular.
Okay.
But the idea is that it's not necessarily transparent from the outside, but only the inside.
Okay. Can we look at the J-gel elevation from the mall, not the inside?
From the interior.
Okay. This is what I had a question about, whether this tile and whether you're adding any of that tile to that lower section or not, that same tile detail.
Currently, we're just proposing this piece and the upper corner, and then as it dropped down, the two lower elements, as you see it from the corner, did not, just to kind of create a little bit of a hierarchy between the two.
And the location of that chimney, what does it relate to? Is this the same proportion on the other side, or is what's dictated that location for the chimney?
Just to comment, your CAD drawing looks like it's got tile on this roof,
Yeah.
even though the sketch doesn't. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep, you're right. I could go to the corner. I think it was creating a uniform length around the corner, but we can double check that. Actually, does it show? No, I got it trimmed there.
What page?
Well, I'm not sure. Can I do that on the roof plan? I don't have a roof plan, but maybe it's there. It's approximately the same amount of distance, and I just sort of line up that chimney, the transition where that lower piece.
It's already lower, and that's why
it's the facade, sort of that where all those parts come together. It just felt like a natural place to bring that transition up.
Other questions, Stephanie?
That's it for my questions.
Would you like to start in comments?
Sure. I think it's ready for preliminary design approval. I like all the proposed changes. I have a few comments about some of the details. I think that the J-gel punched openings, the high windows that you mentioned were louvered wood, should be studied to consider a metal, some sort of interesting metal, perforated metal grill. Study tiling the lower mall portion of the J-gel facade parapet. um, will be interested in seeing the cornice tile detail. And I personally would prefer, because of the modern aesthetic of the Toys R Us facade and the perforated metal, for it to be more original and custom designed rather than some irregularly perforated material, which I think might look a little dated. And then study the depth on the cornices at the Pottery Barn to get some shade and shadow effects with the tile overhang. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
I think good comments by Stephanie. I also have some thoughts about these ads. I think that they might go better as fake windows. This seems nice here, and it's really locked into place. Maybe the fake windows would give it a little more character because there's a lot of wall, just a few little punched openings, and that might just sell it a little better. The Toys R Us facade, where do we find that?
I was thinking of more of a decorative grill, not just a metal
that
grill.
might be maybe an improvement as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Mesh.
Right.
So I think it's a really clever idea to solve the problem. To my eye, the proportions just don't feel quite right, though. It feels everything else is, these look like 10-foot, 12-foot doors here, and then it becomes, it's very, very different proportion-wise. And maybe if the perforation were the whole upper portion, that might pull it together more. I'm not quite sold on the way these panels are broken out. Maybe there's a more interesting way to do that. Maybe the top of this is somewhat decorative. It feels like it's heading the right direction, but it needs a little more TLC. And I keep coming back to the notion that maybe this is all the perforated metal, and then the proportions feel more in keeping with the rest of the mall. Sorry, I can't be more specific than that.
I'd like that, yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a comment.
Okay, those are my comments. And then also consider break metal. I forget what this store is here. To wrap the plaster, if that's an option.
Right.
On the Pottery Barn or on the Toys R Us?
So this is the Toys R Us here.
Yeah.
I mean, if this were all wrapped in kind of break metal, it might be quite nice. Just as the big arched opening with a little bit of recess or something that you could do above it or beside it.
Yeah.
Okay. Amy?
I agree with Stephanie's comments, and for the vents above on the J. Jill, kind of looking at decorative metal there. But other than that, I agree with her comments.
Okay. Howard?
I agree with all of the comments, particularly about the one, the Toys R Us comment, in which I would just say study the perforated screen. That's an important element, and it has something. It's contemporary, but it could be also very timeless. The other thing is I'm not wild about the pearl-colored white awnings on J. Jill. I'd like to see a little color in the awnings. I mean, that's just my take. Okay. And also the double-coursed parapet cap there. That supporting that tile, that needs to be studied. This little piece right here. You mentioned it was going to be doubled. But when you get the double and it has thickness, and how far out does that come? And so you'll be turning the corner. Needs to be studied.
Okay.
Those are my comments.
I'll just add a couple of additional thoughts. Okay, this is existing to remain. Is this a wood grill or is that a metal grill? What is that currently?
That is a decorative wood grill painted.
And is it recessed?
Yeah.
It is.
Let's see if I may not have a photo anymore. Yeah, it's recessed.
Okay. I think it was Stephanie that made the comment about the perforated metal corten, that it needed to be a random pattern as opposed to uniform.
Yes.
I think that it could really be successful if it was much more playful than just a straight panel with regular perforations. I think if it was kind of like an art piece, maybe if it was, angled a little bit, that or something that gives it, that announces it as being even more offbeat from the rest of the, a very linear and uniform storefronts. I think it might be successful, but I think it would have to be really carefully done, and the way it's supported and all of that is going to make a difference too. So I agree with Scott about that. This is almost seems like an afterthought. It's not really working with the rest of it, and I don't envy you in the difficulty you have with that, but I think it still needs some work. And I think that Stephanie's comment also about getting a larger reveal here, so that this is not just a little pinched detail, is very important as well. And something about the proportion of this in relation to this, something feels really confined about this. Like maybe this wants to be taller than what you've done here, and maybe not uniform in relation to these bands. So maybe these pop up a little bit more. So looks like there should be more playfulness there and interest by maybe making that band a bit taller. Someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, before you do make a motion, we've got 9 items on the full board agenda in 2 weeks. So I'm not quite sure with the timing of it all, if you will make it on in 2 weeks. I just wanted to warn you. Thanks.
Well, I would say that, we've looked at this a couple of times now, and it'd be nice when you came back if you were ready for a final. So it might take some time to get all those details worked out and get your clients to approve and all that. So maybe
would you like to give it PDA today?
Well, I think that we need to make the motion, but that's what seems to me that's the direction we're headed.
Well, never mind. I'll let somebody make a motion, or I will make a motion.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. I think this is ready for project design approval. Continued 2 weeks.
4 weeks.
Or 4 weeks, depending on the schedule, with the following comments. Applicant to study the cornice details at Pottery Barn for the tile overhang, and try to get as much irregularity and overhang and shade and shadow on that tile roof as possible. Study the Toys R Us facade, adding irregularity to the corten steel perforations to make it a custom, unique art piece. Study the J-gel punched openings in the high windows to be a decorative metal grill. Study the cornice tile details at the J-gel corner and add them to the lower roof portion as well. They don't have to be exact, but something in the same family of the design of the roof portion with the tile. One board member thought that study should be made of the color selection for the canvas awnings. But I would like to go on record as saying I liked the color as proposed, and I think it's nice, crisp white and nice contrast to their beige colors. As long as it's kept nice and white.
All right. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Second. Okay. Under discussion.
I think the applicant ought to just take another pass at the area above the perforated canopy and study that design just a bit.
And also adding adding brake metal to the Toys R Us windows.
Right. Do other board members feel the same as Stephanie about adding tile to those lower parapets on the JGL elevation?
I'm 50-50 on that.
It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the design, whatever double stack. You could do a single stack or some sort of adding tile to that.
I think some just plaster would help provide differentiation and interest there without tile. So I'm not sure we need to have tile on every parapet.
I could even see a
we
shed tile
don't.
roof.
We don't on that portion of the parapet along the side there. Only
You're talking about the
only on
other
the
side.
front. Only on this front portion, in the mall portion.
Rectangle piece there.
Yeah.
Let's look at, where is that?
The front elevation? Or?
Yeah.
From the mall.
Of JGL, the JGL elevation from the mall. In the back.
I think it was, were we back? Well, it's here,
It had the-
smaller.
Yeah.
It had
Just that one?
Yeah.
That's the one you're referring
Yeah.
to?
So what? So how did you want that comment then?
Yeah, it's
Well, I
here,
think
here
there's-
you kind of can capture the whole experience. So it'd be, you kind of get a sense.
Somewhat
Yeah, why-
bookended.
Huh?
Somewhat bookended.
Why not
Yeah.
even a shed roof there?
That's what I thought too, yeah.
I think that would look great.
A what?
A
A shed roof. See, well, one opportunity for having a nice 8-foot-long shed roof.
If you've got the ceiling height.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
It's interior space, right? This is an existing wall and interior space. So
So you'd be creating a new bearing point on the exterior wall,
Yeah.
which you couldn't accommodate structurally.
Right.
Okay.
well, and again, it kind of goes to disruption of what they're looking for and their interior scope.
Yeah. If you
Yeah,
shed
I
here, you're going to crash at an awkward spot.
Well, we'd have to come low. We looked at shed opportunities because I think that's a good idea, but I couldn't do that there.
Okay. Oh, so I'll withdraw my revision to Stephanie's comments.
I would like to add one comment, and this is about the perforated metal screen at the Toys R Us. It's been said to make something irregular and kind of artistic and so forth, and I'm thinking that, if you go down that route, you'll be doing something like Gary's Disney Hall or whatever, warped metal and all that. And I don't think that's going to add to the elevation. I think just studying the pattern of the perforations
Yeah.
is going to be the way, and then having a strong form to cover the facade of the building. And I agree, it's kind of the layer cake is not good, but to study the form and again something that is sort of causes stillness in that area as opposed to a lot more noise, visual noise. One board member. That's all.
I think you're on point there, Howard.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Okay, so I don't know how you're going to incorporate that into the comments, but I think you got the point.
Yeah.
So all in favor of the motion as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I don't know if we do 4 weeks, if we just want to walk that in.
We're on to item 5, 719 West Sola Street.
I'll let you know. And I'm putting this one note on here, Ryan.
It's another continued item. Proposal to demolish an existing 854 square foot, one-story dwelling unit. a carport and a shed and construct a new 3,121 square foot two-story dwelling.
No, I do have before I start, the landscape prints came out really bad on that set. So
Okay.
we
So we got
fixed that. Yes. And so this has a good set, so you want to look at these ones. I have 3 new ones here.
Oh, okay. Is that the only thing changed on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to have Scott, while we're getting set up, I'm going to have Scott read the comments from last time.
Okay, previous comments. Comment number 1, provide building footprints of adjacent buildings on both east and west elevations to understand and properly address any impact to adjacent neighbors. Number 2, the board appreciates the overall project concept and finds the proposed size, mass, bulk, and scale appropriate to the neighborhood. However, applicant to provide additional architectural details, traditional Spanish, and locations and photographs of other two-story structures and houses in the neighborhood. Number 3, restudy the street-facing north elevation to provide more balanced massing and character facing the street. 4, suggest a modulation of the roof line and variations in the fenestration. 5, study the privacy device and screening at the second floor deck. It's a lot here. 6, restudy the rear carport design to reduce the height and impact to the rear house and adjacent neighbors. 7, study more traditional detailing at the master bedroom balcony. 8, provide compliance with stormwater management. 9, the board recommends that an arborist make a recommendation as the foundation details near the I can't say that tepuina tree or proposed tepuana, thank you, or proposed to remove it.
Isn't that a great way for us to say hello? If you could give your name, please.
My name is Armando Arias del Cid, and I am a principal in charge of the design. Sergio is a
I'm Sergio, and I'm representing the owner.
Welcome. And Sergio will probably be also our landscape installer contractor, right?
Installer,
yeah. We spent a lot of time reviewing and revising the landscape plan for because we had to provide a preliminary swim plan. Mm-hmm. And so when the civil engineer in charge of the swim and the landscape designer got together, they had a lot of fun. And so they did, let me see, where is the landscape here? Swim is SW of 1, 2, 3. And I want to mention that first because it's a change from the previous presentation. So we have continued to have the permeable paving design, although it changes a little bit. And they have decided to create a infiltration trench here in this area. The lot is flat, basically, so big infiltration trench there. And then big bioswale area at front as well. So, and then going forward, the designer, the landscape designer cannot be here today, but she wanted me to be clear that I talk about this first. And so her intention was threefold here. First, to provide for drought-tolerant planting, and that planting that is also in the list from the city. Second, she wanted a lot of color that went with the Mediterranean Spanish look of the house. And third, that it was, of course, the permeability of the soil will allow for retention of most of the water that we had here. So she agrees that she believes that this should be a model for Santa Barbara landscape design. So that said, I did what she wanted me to do. All right. Okay. So we paid a lot of attention to that. And then we went to first to address the carport in the back. the owner agreed to create not just the carport, but to design a new detached garage that have more to look more like the buildings, the main building itself.
Can we go through these items one by one to make sure we cover them?
Sure, I just wanted to go through the most important ones.
All right, go ahead.
Check,
Go ahead.
check them
I'm
out.
sorry. Go right ahead.
So, and that's the, on page A3, then you will see the elevation of the little carport. That's the main elevation. On the other views, you will see the side elevations. Although it's a very simple structure, we believe that it ties now better with the character of the house as well. So you can see the detailing as a stucco building with little vent tiled, and then a scallop detail on the rake that we're going to follow in the main house as well. So something simple, but a door that looks like a double door as well.
Are these little columns?
Oh, those are actually downspouts.
Oh,
That will look the same as the downspouts, the leader downspouts that we be using in the house.
all right.
Okay, and so as we are here as well, one of the main points was to study the front northwest facade to improve the detailing and scale in that. So if you see this view on the east corner, that's the north side corner. Before we had a straight open porch kind of veranda element. Now we created this little arch condition, which also in the north elevation, you can see that as one of the main features. It's a bigger arch. And then we also, of course, you can see the scalloping details at the top. We created a little covered balcony with which we hope to have this very well detailed in the corbels and the posts as well. And then we modified the front roof line to create an overhip on the side area so that we can kind of wrap around that and make it more, we feel more human scale that way. And made that window larger. A very important change also in the detailing of that part, and also the east elevation is the little base upset stucco pattern at the bottom of the columns here, and overall tying all of this area with the front area as well. Mm-hmm. So we believe we created a new window at the top that, because before we had a blank spaces, we felt it was too the white space was too much wall, so we created that. Also, the chimney tower has been detailed a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And then if we move to the west area on that corner as well, in view number 2, you see that we have detailed this element a little bit different, so that now it has more playful appearance with the scallop and at the top, wider window that is deeper recess on it, and the detail at the bottom of the cantilever area as well. Per your request, we restudied the windows here. We minimized and we kind of organized that a little bit better, increased the size of the windows on the bedroom sitting area. Also aligned them better with the bottom portion, so we feel it works better now. And we added the awnings here, the little roof overhang options on top of the doors as well. Overall, we feel that it's got more detail. And then finally there, you wanted us to study the slope of the curve that created this protection on the left view number. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of that horse neck detail that we see around. So that's what we did there. And then if we look at the view number 4 on the south, we restudied completely the stair on the outside. So per your comments, you wanted to have that stair open to the backyard. So we did that. We made it a simpler object. so that it became open towards the back as well.
Okay.
So those are those will be then taking care of 3, 4, 5 carport design, and then a very important change, I believe, is what we did in the main bedroom balcony. As you can see, we took out all. There were too many objects going on in there, so we created a simple wrought iron balcony with better proportion, we believe, at the top and a better opening at the bottom that is recessed as well. And then the swim pad, we are providing a preliminary swim pad, just waiting for the preliminary design approval to get the consultants going to that as well. And regarding the tree that we have there, what we did was to reduce the stair width to give for more space for that tree. We believe we want to keep the tree, the owner wants to keep it, and we believe with the additional space, the roots are going to work fine. We don't have an arborist report, but we would like not to have one if it's possible. The owner's representative is an experienced landscape installer, and he knows that he believes the tree will work fine there.
Okay. One of the other comments we had was about footprints of adjacent buildings.
Absolutely.
Looks like you've got them. I see them here.
We got them there, but we also got a bigger page on G2 that shows the. Of course, this is a big one right on the corner. Then we have 2 residence here with garage, a residence in the back, another residence adjacent to it with garage and shed, and 2 more over there. So.
And then we also asked for photographs of other 2-story buildings. You know,
we didn't get more photographs, but we believe that the ones we have before kind of show what the 2-story buildings around. This building is a 2-story, very tall, and then across the street we have also 2-story buildings, and I could point them to you. So these are all 2-story buildings around the neighborhood.
Okay, is this nearby?
That's ways back here, but let me just show you here. This is the property right here. And this is the 2-story building next door, right there.
Okay.
Then if you move here, this is also a 2-story, very bulky.
You have a picture of that?
Sure. You can see that house there as well. I don't even know how it, because I do have it.
Is that it, maybe?
That's the laundromat.
No, that's that's on the back here. The laundromat is a huge.
It's a laundromat?
Yes.
Oh.
Everybody knows the laundromat.
You can see it here. See, it's a very big structure.
Okay.
Yeah, we're right here, and that's a huge structure up there.
All right.
All of these in front are 2-story buildings.
Okay. All right.
Does
that wrap it up?
I'm open to comments and questions. Yes.
All right. So I'll start with public comment, and there's no one here to comment, so we'll go to questions from the board. Stephanie, go ahead, please.
Armando, on the south elevation, there is a little bump out at the garage, and I was wondering if what dictated the height of that the height of this.
Oh, yes. Well, it's more a construction issue and also a scale issue, because what we like to do construction-wise is to build the top of the garage, and then on top of that, at the edge, build the roof.
Both are your deck joists. The roof starts at the top of your deck joist.
Exactly. So that makes it a little bit higher there.
Okay.
The other option would be to lower that, will be to create the roof starting at the plate, which would be about 12 inches lower, yes.
Okay. And detached garage north elevation. Is there a reason why you decided to add this gable roof to the simple gable roof?
I would like to have a simple gable looking on the other side would be even more traditional. But the fact is that if we look from the front, I thought it was important to relate the big building to the small building with the front gable option. It's a way of making them be part of the same group instead of having just a gable on the other side, right? So I think it relates better to the main building this way. But
well, the main building has hips on the front, and it has gables in other areas.
I agree with you.
Okay.
But just looking at the north elevation right above the garage elevation, you can see how it ties up together, more open to that. When you go through this neighborhood, you can see down to the garages, and most of the time, the building in the back doesn't really have anything to do with the building in the front as an architectural piece or group. So that's the idea. It's not set in stone, of course, but that's the idea.
Other questions?
Is there are you just proposing as far? Well, it's not really a comment. We can get to colors later on. It's down the road.
Yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Scott?
No questions.
Questions?
Okay. Harold? Oh, I'm sorry. Courtney's here. Courtney's back. Courtney. Without.
Well, I have to say that overall, I think your revisions and your changes have brought this project around 100% for me.
Thank you.
And you have some very nice things going on. I do have some questions, and they relate to comments about little spaces like this here, which I don't know what they do, and yet they.
Can you point it to the plan?
Yes, they are. We're on sheet A2. This is the first floor plan. On the west side of the living room, where there is already, it's only one window for a very large room in the west, and there's this little rectangular form there that I don't know how it relates to the upstairs or the downstairs.
Yeah, it does, and that's a good question. Thank you, Howard.
Okay, so
the idea is this: Doña Alicia has got an old fireplace. It's an electric fireplace that she would like to place in this building as well, and she wanted to place it somewhere in the living room. So what I did was create a little space there where we could put her fireplace, kind of tucked away. Ideally, we would like to create a real fireplace, with burning stove, but I don't know if we can encroach into the setback by 2 feet. But the intention of that space is to locate Doña Alicia's fireplace.
okay, so any fireplace that goes there is going to come up through the bedroom upstairs.
No.
No
This
chimney?
one is, yeah, no. You're correct, yes. But in this case, we have one that is not a real fireplace, so hence it won't have a vent. But if I could encroach into the setback by 2 feet, I could have a real fireplace, but the vent could go free up to the top.
I think you can do that.
If I can do, I'll do it. Yeah.
No fireplaces.
Not into the setback.
Right. I
Okay.
thought we could, but.
So then the other thing is the comment regarding the east elevation, where you have 2 small arches
Yes.
on the east and then a large arch on the north.
Mm-hmm.
And then upstairs you have this eyebrow of wood trellis and open railings and so forth. And then down you have some other little recessed entrances and wrought iron and so forth. That elevation is very busy. to me.
The east elevation.
East elevation, and I'm wondering if the little porch on the second floor would look more sort of at rest if you had 3 arches upstairs that matched the 2 arches downstairs, so that was a covered porch that went all the way back to the door to the FAU.
Yes.
So it would be sort of the building would become more solid.
I agree with you, but the design intent initially was twofold. First, to have a human scale kind of, people walking on the sidewalk looking at the building, that the arches and the shed roof at the bottom will do that. So they will perceive that as one part. And then second, the building is a long building. And because it's a long building, we wanted to make sure that we articulate it so that it read more, not just one object, but as several objects. And you're right, it reads like that way. Now, that particular element with the 3 columns separated in that particular space, we thought it was important to do it that way so that articulation again became a valid object per se, which we will detail really well with the wood corbels and wrought iron. But, your point is valid. It's just another solution that we could have.
Well, you have your big trellis in the back, and I thought that would be where you would flex your trellis muscle.
It is on the north side.
I agree with you.
It is on the north side, though, Howard, and I don't know that it's...
So how about comments, Howard? Why don't you start
that's
comments?
a comment. I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Howard.
Do a little
Courtney.
quick
I just think the landscaping looks great, and I don't have any comments on the building.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy.
I agree with the comments from Howard and Courtney.
Okay. Scott?
Once Howard said that, I really dug into that too, and I'm finding myself in agreement that something just as smooth and calm down this part of the elevation would be helpful. Maybe it's losing that little window, maybe the railing's all solid. Something that just simplifies it a bit, I think might be helpful.
Stephanie.
I don't quite agree with Howard on that. I think that it is on the north side of the building, and it may not need that roof structure, but the trellis structure only, because it might become too shady over there. Since it's going to be facing the north. I like the composition, and I really like the changes that you've made to the building. Often when we have these detached garages in the back in this neighborhood especially, they're meant to be smaller in scale. They're meant to be in keeping with the style of the front house, but not grandiose in any way. And I think that the garage could be simplified and removing of this kind of the front gable over the door, just to a simple gable roof, and that you could get your downspout and gutter along that front edge to simplify all of that. And I think it's still in keeping with the style of the house because you have a lot of variety of roof forms, tips and gables and other details. So I really like the back stairs, and it seems that it's in keeping with the style of the neighborhood, and that's not going to be overbearing on your neighbors in any way either.
Great. Thank you.
I'll just add my 2 cents. You'd mentioned last time that you felt like this was really the front elevation because of the large tree you have in the front, and this is the primary area that the building will be viewed from, and you're quite right about that. And I don't remember exactly how the previous design was on right here, but I thought it was very, very nice. And what we
Minus
were,
the arches, yeah.
huh? It was without the arches? Okay, well, it seemed like it held together better than this does, and I not going to design it for you, but
Okay.
I will make one comment. The first thing that came to my mind was that the arch, to have an arch of this size on one side of the elevation and then turn the corner and have these two small ones speaks to discontinuity of that corner. It seems to me that this arch should match. There should just be one here and one here, column in the corner. But you've gotten lots of comments about that. Everybody seems to be focused on it. So I think there's some redesign necessary, but you're on the right track, and the changes, as everyone's mentioned, are really nice since the last time. So someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Yes, Scott.
Starting off, I think the board appreciates all the design changes, and you've done a very good job of listening to everything we said from the previous meeting. So excellent job there. I think there's several on the board that feel that the east elevation toward the front may need some fine-tuning, possibly simplifying, and perhaps making the two arches at the two sides of the building match in proportion. There was a comment about the west elevation by the deck. I know structurally it's more difficult to lower that shed, but I agree with Stephanie that the proportions would be better. Somebody could consider. I don't know if it's a deal breaker not to do it.
Well, we thought about it.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe we need a little straw poll on the rear garage, if it's satisfactory as designed, or if people feel with Stephanie that it ought to be simplified. We can add that later on, I suppose.
Let's go ahead. Let's go. How many board members feel the garage in the rear roof should be simplified? There you go.
Okay.
4 out of 6.
Okay. That's the answer. And then that's all the comments I can remember. Someone else can chime in and second the motion. Howard?
I second the motion.
Okay.
Under discussion, anyone?
What's the motion? Indefinite continuance?
Do you want to?
Well, we would like to try to get some consultants working on this. If you think that the design is in the right direction, I'm more than happy to do those changes.
It's just that our agenda is filling up in 2 weeks.
He's not asking to come back in 2 weeks, so we are going to give. It sounds like we're going to give you a project design approval, so you can start that process of working drawings.
Great.
But so you probably won't be ready in 2 weeks to come back and let us view those.
No.
So it'll be at least a month.
You know what? It's that he doesn't have his ARC letter report's not yet been completely reviewed. It's been submitted but not reviewed, and it hasn't come back to me yet. So it is comments only today. You could make say a sentence that it's ready for project design approval.
I think the project's
But
ready for
indefinite.
design approval, but we can't give it to you.
And I reviewed the historical report, and he didn't find any.
Okay.
There were no finds.
Nonetheless, we can't give it to you without that. Yeah.
Okay, so I could proceed with the design development and construction document.
Well, we can't tell you that, but that's implicit. Yeah.
You're getting generally positive comments. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
back
did you
before
get the
we-
rest of that motion?
Is it
No.
PDA or?
No, we can't. It's comments
Indefinitely.
only. Yeah.
Indefinite continuance.
Yes. So, and Howard seconded. Any under discussion? Any additions to those comments? No. Yes, Stephanie.
Perhaps the applicant should consider this. This 3D study is very helpful, and they always are. When you come back with your restudy of that front corner, perhaps a sketch at a human scale of this corner, as those arches, how they turn the corner, would be helpful.
Great.
And which corner is that?
The
That's
northeast.
Northeast.
Thank you.
All right. That's a recommendation rather than a requirement.
Suggestion.
Suggestion.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
very much.
Thank you for waiting.
Really appreciate it. Our comments are really good. You can keep those.
We just need one.
Just one set.
Oh, thank you.
So you can take the others if you like.
Yeah.
Thanks, Armando.
Thank you.
And that concludes our meeting for February 16th.
So I smoke a little too much, and I joke a little too much, and the tunes I request are not always the best, but the ones where the trumpets blare. So I go at a maddening pace, and I pretend that it's taking her place. But what else can you do at the end of a love affair?
And when he comes my way, I'll do my best to make him stay. He'll look at me and smile. I'll understand, and in a little while he'll take my hand. And though it seems absurd, I know we both won't say a word. Maybe I shall meet him